All right, good morning, everyone. We'll call this to order. Ask everyone to please stand. Sergeant Sean Hess, Supervisor of Crisis Intervention Team, is going to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To remain standing, our chaplain, Bill Fox, is going to give us invocation.
Let us pray. Lord God, as we turn our attention this month to a spirit of thanksgiving, we give you thanks for all the good things you have given us. We give you thanks for these commissioners. We ask you to fill them with the gifts and virtues they need to help keep our department strong and our city safe. We ask you to give them the gifts and virtues of prudence, of justice, of charity, of wisdom. We ask you to lead them in your discernment to make the decisions that help us all. We also pray for all those still impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We pray for those who are sick and those who are dying. We pray for those who care for the sick and those who mourn the dead. We pray for all those who face a loss of economic or emotional security. May all of us persevere through this crisis more whole, more holy, and more healthy. And we ask these things as we ask all things in your holy name. Amen.
All right, our city council presentation. Mayor, would you like to introduce the designee this morning?
Yes, Bishop, thank you very much. And as your church is in her wonderful district, the district I grew up in and lived in most of my life, I'm excited to welcome Councilwoman Melissa Robinson to the podium. And her outside of council life, she's the chair of the Black Healthcare Coalition in Kansas City, previously served on the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors, and represents much of East and Center Zone for everybody who's here today. So thank you for being here, Councilwoman Robinson.
Thank you so much. I'm going to use my notes. I have quite a bit to talk about today, but again, my name is Melissa Robinson, and I am the city council member of the 3rd District. And I'm not particularly excited to talk about elephants in the room, but the reality of it is that the city of Kansas City and the city of our police department, we're in a dysfunctional relationship. But there is hope, and there is opportunities for us to grow together and to grow collaboratively. We can sit around and, blame each other. The residents can blame the governor. We can talk about things in court. We can have difficult conversations during the budget session. But all in all, a combative stance really results in unnecessary casualties. And so our community is fractured and may eventually break if we do not recognize that we have to work together. And the only way that we can make sure that our police force is strong is that we work to improve the department as a team. So one of the things is that we can collaboratively start to look at the 2017 matrix that was presented, and perhaps we can do a joint agenda setting where we identify our top concerns together, but we again have to work on these things jointly. I highly recommend that the city council and the board of police commissioners that we meet together, we work together at least 4 times a year, having a joint meeting. I also recommend that we might put together a small committee to help us to be more productive and prepared for those joint meetings. Now on to elephant number 2. The majority of the people directly served by the Kansas City Police Department live in East Patrol, Metro Patrol, Central Patrol. The Board of Police Commissioners, you have to build a base of residents who currently live on the east side. These residents need to share in power in decision-making with you, and we have to make sure that you're formally consulting with them to make sure that their interests are represented in your vote. I also want to talk a little bit about mental health, increasing officers, community trust, and COVID. We know that, our officers aren't robots. We should make to ensure that we're not punishing officers who are strong enough to ensure their emotional fitness. We recognize that our officers are exposed to trauma day in and day out without the ability to emotionally process, coupled with not having enough officers to cover calls. That's a recipe for disaster. We cannot continue to leave our rank and file bare. I know that you all are working on staffing issues. We recognize at the city level that we do have inadequate staffing, and it's wreaking havoc on the department. I would ask that you please explore seriously tapering or suspending leadership promotions until the rank and file positions are filled. By and large, the 3rd District residents, we want increased policing. 3rd District residents want protective police experiences. I thank you for your recent decision on the resolution to be more prudent in the salary line item. The reality of it is that we may have to make other sacrifices within the department budget, as the city's general fund just simply has no room for expansion. I want to talk a little bit more about mental health. I really believe that we have to transform and normalize mental health. I honor the courage, the fitness, and the will to protect and serve that the majority of our officers bring to the city. But we recognize that they're human. We have to help them to show up to be emotionally fit to do this job. We can only do that if we help to change the culture and make sure that everyone is involved in being emotionally well. Let's talk a little bit about community trust. In order to restore community trust, there has to be autonomy given to the Office of Community Complaints. And the Board of Commissioners should be the only entity that can override a recommendation by the OCC. I understand that in the private sector, the buck stops with the CEO, especially when it comes to employment matters. We are not in the private sector. Without community trust, policing does not work. So we know that everyone that the police encounters, when they encounter residents, they're at risk when community trust isn't, when community trust is absent, just as the residents are at risk as well. We have to be able to depend upon the outcomes of the OCC process. There is very little room for error in this area. The other thing is around COVID. There's been calls into my office about COVID, and so it's never too late to do the right thing. I don't know exactly what the protocols are, but I would ask that you to revisit the protocols for COVID and take a look at the Police Executive Forum, as they have strong recommendations around keeping the community safe as it relates to policing, but we ask that you take a look at that. Finally, we know that you really have a very important job to do. Taking time to govern is really hard. And as governors, our alliance is to the mission. And our first alliance should be to the taxpayers and to residents. We have to have a residents first decision-making model. No one at 414 that sits in the chamber on East 12th Street wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? How can I vilify the police? No one does that. We all want the same things. We want to cut homicides in half immediately, and we want to make sure that our force is strong, that it feels protected, that our community feels protected, and our residents have the utmost protection. We know that the city of Kansas City, we're not perfect. We have to own up to the fact that we have to address a rehabilitation center. We have to address a detention center. There's things that we have to come to the table and we have to be accountable for as well. I thank you for your time. I respect your position. I am always available to each of you, to the whole of you, as you work to make sure that our residents trust our police force. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And I hope that when we have budget talks, that we can continue this dialogue.
Absolutely. They told me I only had a couple minutes, so I tried to rush through it. So, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Not a question, but I want you to know that we have discussed the fact that we want a working relationship with the city. And the resolution that you mentioned is one of the steps that's been taken. And with the OCC, we are the last place. Nobody else can override the OCC but our board. And I think you'll probably, from seeing our agenda, we're doing more to have community participation in the OCC as well. But I appreciate your thoughts and the idea of having joint meetings. It's kind of scary, but I think it probably would be a good idea. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Councilwoman.
you. Thank you. Executive Services Bureau Deputy Chief Doug
Speak to her for
Nehemiah.
Good morning. We're just going to make this very brief. I was asked to talk about the radios and where we're at on our radio system. Once again, it comes to terminology and understanding terminology when it is the radio system. And one of the things I'm going to be talking about is end of life and what that really means. So I prepared a statement basically to give you that information. And then when I'm done with that, I have manager Jeff Brame here, who's in charge of our communications support unit, if you have any technical questions about the radio system or anything like that. So we've been discussing this radio system for several years now. We are at a critical time with our radios. We talk about end of life and what that really means. End of life and emergency radio systems basically is they need to be replaced approximately every 7 years. That's standard for the industry, whether that's fire, police, EMS. A radio is considered at end of life when the radio system is no longer supported by the manufacturer. There are no additional software upgrades from the manufacturer. There are no more parts being built to fix the radio itself. The manufacturer, as well as the department, usually will have enough parts to maintain that radio system for an additional 5 years after its quote unquote end of life. So if you look at where we are at, our radio system right now is 10 years old. We bought it in 2010. The upgrades, well, let me back up. So we bought our system in 2010. We have that 5-year window. We're really pushing in August of 2022 to be at 12 years and end of life. So that's why I say it's critical. So we, as you well know in our budget transmittal letter, the upgrades to our system are outlined in that for a total cost, and this is an approximation of $9.9 million for the portable radios, which are the handhelds that each officer holds, and then an additional $3.1 million for the mobile command radio system. A positive note of this is I have had very, very positive meetings with Chief Donna Lake from the fire department, with actual city staff, been on the phone with them, been on Zoom meetings with them regarding the radio system. And I think we are headed in the right direction to work on this. So with that, I would take any questions that you have over that has come up or you've heard about our radio system, or Jeff can answer any of the technical questions. But I did want to make sure that everyone knows we are being heard about the situation and the time that we're in with the position we're in on the lifespan of our radio system.
So we've had this discussion, and so, as you mentioned, fire, police, even the city, we're all on the same system, correct?
Yes.
So then it's not just a police issue, even though it's very important to us. So I guess I would address the mayor and ask, what kind of dialogue, Mayor, you all have had about the radios and the communication.
If you're talking about city council, almost none officially. I think Deputy Chief Niemeyer is talking about you visit with which divisions or is it the manager's office that?
Well, multiple staff, yes, multiple staff at the city. But the one thing that we need to understand is even though that we're all in the same system, fire is responsible for buying their radios. We're responsible for buying our radios. City workers, whoever's on our radio system, they're responsible for buying their radios. They just run off of our system. So what we're talking about when we talk about end of life is an officer's portable radio that they use every day, which is that way throughout the fire department. We obviously have many, many more than anyone else because each officer has a radio. It's not that way at the fire department. It's not that way at the city. So we've had discussions, and to answer your question, we've begun those. I've talked to Don or Chief Lake at length. They're in the process. I think Jeff told me yesterday they tested theirs. They tested their radios yesterday. They've purchased their radios. So that's kind of where we are in the process of.
So even though it's a main hub,
we take care of the system.
Okay.
The antennas, the towers, and let me back up and give you a little history. When I was a liaison at City Hall, Chief Lake was actually an assistant city manager. So we worked on this together. So we have the history in the background. So our budget when it comes to the radio system is higher than anyone else because if you remember a couple of meetings ago, we replaced all the batteries for, I think, 4 cell tower sites. That comes from us because the radio system for everyone in the city was put under the police department. So we replaced the backup battery systems. Things like that is what would you be talking about a system that we all use, but we have that money funneled to us to take care of it. All the rest of it is on individuals. So I think that answered your question when it comes to how the system is itself, who is responsible for what equipment. We have to come up with the money through the city to purchase our equipment, and it's in the rough neighborhood of like 1,800 radios.
Any other questions from the board members?
Is the fire department's bought radios, new radios, you're saying?
Yeah, they haven't bought them. They're testing which really there's 2 systems. And is this correct? 2 systems. You have Harris and Motorola.
Well,
Yeah. Now, when we get real technical, I'll be.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
The fire has Motorola radios right now, which are closer to end of life than what we have is on the police department. We have Harris radios on the police department. They are at end of life also. To go into the fire aspect of this, fire batteries are no longer available from Motorola. So they are scrambling to try to hurry up and test radios and buy new radios because of their battery problem. At this point, Harris, we can still get all the parts we need for Harris for our radios, but we are seeing much more failures out of our radios because of the age, because of them being 11 years old. I pretty much answered that question.
is I presume the new radios will work on the system that we have.
Yes. The radio system.
But we want to replace the system also.
No, the radio
just the
system will be upgraded next year to get us out to another 4 or 5 years. Motorola has that planned in June of next year. That's at each, we have 11 tower sites, and all that equipment will be brought up to date that's through an SUA with Motorola, a service agreement we have with Motorola. And most of that cost will be taken care of by Motorola to do that upgrade.
3.1 million, it's on top of the 9.9. That's system upgrades?
That's the mobile, and you want to explain the mobile command?
We have a mobile in every vehicle on the police department. The mobiles were bought at the same time. The mobiles do last a little longer because they're stuck in a trunk or under a seat and they're not wagged around. So they do last longer, but then again, they usually replace those within about 10 years. The portables, obviously, each officer is given their own portable.
And I want to make sure I go back and hit this again. We're talking with city staff and things like this. I talked about it before. We've been talking about this for 3 or 4 years, right? And I wanted to make sure that when we talked about it this time, that we don't just go, because this came up, and Chief Lake and I said the same thing. We were talking about this before. We can't, I mean, we're going to have to replace the radio system, but we need to have the 10-year plan starting immediately, not because we'll all be retired, have it be someone else's problem 10 years from now to go again. I need $10 million to replace radio system. That's not, we need to have communications between the police department, the fire department, and the city to have a plan. And 10 years ago, we bought a system, and here we are 10 years later. So what I'm getting at is I'm really encouraged by the discussions we're having, not only with this, but going forwards, so we don't have people that come from behind all of us don't have this problem 10 years from now.
Yeah, and we don't want to wait till it's a crisis when there's something happening. And because of lack of communication, a life that could have been saved is lost because of lack of communication. So I guess the question is, how do we solve this? We put it in the new budget. So is it something that you're asking for now before the new budget is finalized?
I don't think I don't think we're there yet to ask for it. This is more, we wanted to make you aware of where we are,
Okay.
On the whole collective process, not just with us, but with everybody in the city. So we're going to be discussing this going forwards, not just here on the police department, but with all the other partners that we have on the radio system. The good thing is, when I say system, the system's good. As Jeff just said,
Right.
The system itself is good. We're looking, all this other stuff is equipment,
Right.
really, to put it in terms.
But is this in the budget or is it a decision package?
This is a decision package that we remember we sat at the table and we discussed it.
I would
And
like for us to work on it now.
right, and we are, and we are. I just think it's a different route than necessarily in the budget itself.
So, but do we have any money to do it now out of this year's budget?
Unless you make a significant transfer, I would think not,
No.
from the police department budget.
But we talked about an ordinance that would do all those things.
Right, and this relates somewhat to a question I have, if I may just transition. Has the fire department purchased radios yet, or is everyone in a position where they need radio? Is there a cost to testing?
The fire department has actually selected 2 radios that they are testing, started yesterday, like field testing. They are in the process of working through which radio that they want to purchase.
Do they have an appropriation that will fund their several $1 million for radios?
I think they have a grant situation going on at the fire department.
There's just partial.
Partial
It's a
grant, right.
partial fire only. We talked at length about it. They're going to re-up and try to apply for some more. And I don't know the exact grant. I'd have to talk to Chief Lake about it. But they're once again, their cost is probably half of ours due to the amount that they need. Because not every fireman has a radio like we do. And obviously they rotate them. So her cost is significantly less than ours. So, but But those are some of the things that, once again, those are some of the things that we're looking into too, not just to see about where this money is going to come from, but where we can get other monies from as well.
Other grants.
So everything's being explored. And like I said, I'm gonna say it again because I feel like it's a positive. The meetings that we're having, I feel like are in a positive place. I do. And I'm happy to continue to update you on those meetings and
The problem is some of my questions are more fire related perhaps, because it gives us some idea as to how we're doing it here. For example, how long has fire been testing? Did they have legislative action that directed their radio procurement that they seem to be undergoing? Or is it just kind of the chief recognizes there's a need, they're testing them, and then they'll come to city council for an ordinance to fill the gap?
no, I think they're into life. I mean, their radios are into life, and that, like I said, it's kind of ironic that her and I worked together in the city manager's office back then, and here we are now. So we both understood the situation that we were going to come upon, and here we are both working on it again. She knew that their radio system was end of life. Ours is an end of life. And when we say end of life, theirs is in a worse position than
They're
ours.
in a worse position, yes.
Because their batteries are going bad. So, but they do have some money already allocated through a grant. I know. I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to speak for her.
I won't get you in that trouble. I guess I'll just note this and maybe wrap it. We can follow up. I mean, this isn't the Board of Fire Commissioners, but nevertheless, I'm gravely concerned. Our last two firefighter fatalities in the line of duty related in some ways to communications and our firefighters being in the wrong place when a building collapsed on them. And so it's incredibly disappointing that we find ourselves in this situation, really with both agencies. And I guess what I need to do is follow up with the fire chief and the city manager to see where we are. My thought is it would be related to here is if everybody's about to spend a lot of money on radios, potentially I'm hearing from different people, but maybe the same, or we can. I would think that there's some consistency there in how we, just like you worked on when the chief was the assistant city manager. And I understand things, and I was on the council too, so I don't know why we never fixed it 4 or 5 years ago, but that's water under the bridge. But it'd be nice to, I guess, figure out what that is, figure out what that full cost is, work with this gentleman so we could all just resolve the issue with no threat to our public safety folks anywhere.
Right. And that's
What you're getting to.
That's what I'm trying to, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, Mayor, is this isn't a time where the police department's trying to do their thing and the fire department's trying to do their thing and the city's sitting over here. This is a moment when I won't be here in 10 years. And Chief Lake knows she won't be there in 10 years. But we don't want the people 10 years from now to be in the same situation that we were put in. There was no reason even 5 years ago for us or the council to try to fix something when we were midway through our radio systems. But what we're trying to do this time is make sure that not only do we get this correct, but we have it ready to go next time when end of life is, so that there's not this big push for we have communication problems, because as many of you would probably already know, that's just bad business. So we're working through all of those things together.
We need to remember too that which we're responsible for to communication support is the city. We have KCI, we have water department. There's several city departments that use the radio system also, and they have the same radios, so they are also end of life. So for city council,
and that's why I think we were having all this discussion, because if communication goes down, as the mayor just said, that's a threat to public safety, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen, because then we have a whole nother problem. All right. Deputy Chief Nehemiah, you had general discussion on was it general discussion about radios?
Yes, sir.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
So it looks like we're not going to solve it today, but we at least kick the can down the road a little bit to get closer.
I will make sure that you're kept up up to date when we're having these. And if anybody has any questions at all, you can call me or email me, or I can let you know where we're getting with this. But it is an important matter. We're on top of it. We're working on it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I know we're trying to move along, and I won't make it too in-depth. To answer your earlier question as to what conversations are at the city, for better or worse, the way that the city council will usually make its financing decisions, not frankly unlike the police board, is around budget time. And so I would say there's probably been a strong lack of discussion on radios. Every few years, we hear about it anew, but, and we, probably to our detriment, will silo budgets in a number of different ways. So I can tell you the fire department budget last year was about $180 million. What that all went to, you kind of defer to the fire chief and others, police department discussion, et cetera. If I were just coming up with political solutions now, the idea and the easiest idea might be if there were some ordinance, frankly, that shares that there is this obligation, we figure out how to finance it. That's your 10-year plan. And you don't necessarily write a $25 million check or whatever it is right now. You work with the vendor, you create that sort of thing, upkeep, regular replacement, all of those things. That could be, I think, the way that we resolve this.
We're on the same page. I mean,
So we'll try
those discussions are, these are the exact discussions we're having.
Got it.
Is it possible to produce a graph that would show us if you had a whole pie to say, here's the chunk for the police, here's the chunk for the fire department, here's the chunk for the city? I'd just be interested in the total number of radios, and then, what piece is allocated to each.
Yeah, we can make that happen. I mean, we know exactly how many
Okay. Good.
radios. Jeff knows exactly how many radios we have out there, where they're at.
If
And
you
who
get
they're
it to us
assigned to.
before the next meeting, that would be
Okay.
helpful.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Chairman, just briefly, if I can make one gratuitous point, we've had past discussions and many, particularly across the street, have disagreed with me on airport policing and consolidation of services and funding for that. I mean, as we're talking about public safety threats, having a completely different department on a potentially the same system, but with different hardware devices, and imagine what are the threatening activities that could occur at a large facility like an airport, active shooters, anything of that sort, radio challenges, et cetera. This is partially why you work together and have those collaborative discussions. And while I absolutely commend the deputy chief for working with Chief Lake, and I know he's done that for some time, note, right, there's an airport police department, there are some of these others, and Kansas Cityans are in those areas all the time. We need to guarantee safety for them. And that's why I continue to believe in unification of those aviation policing services would be helpful for us in solving some of those concerns. But topic for another day, man.
Is the Kansas City Airport Police on this radio system, or their own?
Yeah, no, they use our radio system because
So
we can talk.
that'll
back and
show
forth.
up on that graph.
It can.
So
I can get you a list of every single radio that is in Kansas City.
my goal would be to have that graph show everybody that's on it. And I think it gives us a much fairer picture to make some long-term decisions. All right.
Sure. Yes, sir.
All right. If there's no more discussion on that, we'll move to our crime reporting and gun crime report.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning. Morning. Deputy Chief Maven, and you're under what tab?
C is in Charlie. But first, you should have a copy of the daily homicide analysis report, or the blue sheet.
Oh, you gave it to us?
Yes, sir. You refer to that document, you will observe that to date, there have been 135 homicides in 2021. That compares to 164 at the same time in 2020. That's an 18% decrease year to date. Additionally, the 5-year average of homicides year to date is 132. So we're currently up 2% compared to the 5-year average. We have cleared 85 homicides in the current year. That number includes homicides that occurred in 2021 and homicides that occurred in previous years. You also have a paper copy of the non-fatal shooting comparison report in front of you. Should be passed out. You also note on that Between January 1 and November 15th, 2021, there were 454 non-fatal shooting victims in Kansas City. In 2020, we had 568 non-fatal shooting victims during the same time period. So we're down 20% compared to the previous year. In October 2021, we had 51 non-fatal shooting victims compared to 56 in October of the previous year. That's a 9% decrease for the month. Now, if you move to tab C of your books, you'll see on page 2, the October 2021 non-fatal shooting report. It shows that of the 51 non-fatal shooting victims in October, 32 were cooperative. In other words, 19 victims, or 37%, were uncooperative and did not want to press charges. Black males again accounted for the highest number of non-fatal shooting victims with 31, which is 61% of the total number of victims. Second highest number of non-fatal shooting victims were white males with 12, which is 23% of the total number of victims. There were also 7 black females and 1 white female non-fatal shooting victims during the reporting period. The age group with the highest number of non-fatal shooting victims was 25 to 34, with 16 victims, or 31% of the total. The 18 to 24 age group was second with 15 victims, followed closely by the 35 to 44 age group with 14 victims. There were also 4 victims in the 45 and over age group and 2 victims who were younger than 18. The report shows that there are 17 known suspects involved in the shootings, and 11 of the 17 suspects were described as black males. That's 64% of the total number of suspects. 4 suspects were described as black females, which is 24% of the total. And there was also 1 white male and 1 white female suspect. Of the 17 known suspects, 7 or 41% were between the ages of 35 and 44. 6 were between the ages of 18 and 24, or 35%, and 3 were between the ages of 25 and 34. Additionally, we had 1 in the 45 and over group. You turn to page 5, you'll see the recovered firearms report. The department recovered 228 firearms in October 2021 compared to 210 in October of 2020. The 5-year average for firearms recovered in the month of October is 207. And from January 1 through October 31st, 2021, we've recovered 2,055 firearms. If there's no questions regarding firearms-related offenses, Sergeant DeMont Collins of the Law Enforcement Resource Center will provide a brief report on the Real-Time Crime Center. Real-Time Crime Center is an operations center staffed by detectives and analysts who use technology to assist officers as they respond to calls for service.
Good morning. As my boss said, I'm DeMont Collins. I'm the supervisor of the Real-Time Crime Center. I'll do my best to be brief, as I know we've had a lot of information already. We always want to start with the why. The Law Enforcement Resource Center, where the Real-Time Crime Center is staffed, mission is providing accurate and quality information in a timely manner to meet the tactical, strategic, and administrative needs of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. We focus primarily on providing the accurate, quality information in a timely manner, and we do that by utilizing available resources to assist department members in patrol and investigations. The way we do that, just a little brief overview of the history of this is where we're located in the Investigations Bureau Special Investigations Division. The Real-Time Crime Center began in 2013, was initially staffed with 3 detectives and a sergeant. It is now expanded to 6 detectives and a sergeant. These stars are not to scale. Detectives actually do much more work than I do, so it should be even more than that. There's one glaring omission. Earlier in the year, we had a member retire from the police department. He now still serves us in a civilian auxiliary commission, civilian auxiliary position. He basically volunteers his time to assist us, and we are grateful for everything that he does. So how do we accomplish our mission? The first thing we do is we monitor the air, which is basically police radio traffic. We pay attention to what's going on. We have dispatch software. So in a pinch, we would be able to be a backup for the communication staff if they needed to have some sort of a emergency move from the main location to one of the mobile or backup locations. The communications folks do a great job, so generally we don't need to do that. We also monitor our computer-aided dispatch. Most of the calls that are up there are basically traffic violations, traffic accidents. We do our best when we monitor the air, we can look at the calls for service that are in queue, so we can actually respond to some of the calls that are happening before the officers are actually dispatched. We do our best to try and give accurate information. And one of the things that we utilize is our Genetec camera system. We basically have access to over 5,500 cameras throughout the city. We don't physically own most of those cameras. The majority we have through federations with different organizations, but they give us the ability to look in several locations and again, give that information to the officers that are responding to calls for service. Obviously, the number one mission of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is to handle 911 calls for service. So we do everything that we can to support the officers and investigators that do that job. We also utilize mobile license plate readers. These technologies have assisted us on several occasions in helping to solve and resolve violent crimes. Secondary thing that we has been discussed a lot in this room is the reduction of violent crime. We are able to get on the air if we locate crime that has occurred, if we have resources available in the area in the form of a camera or a license plate reader. We're able to give accurate information to the officers. We can let them know direction of travel. We can let them know vehicles that are involved, and we're able to give that information in real time. Some of the other stuff that we use, by virtue of my position, I'm the ShotSpotter administrator. I know ShotSpotter was here last month. I want to say thank you to you for continuing our partnership with them. Just for a few numbers, I don't want to throw out too many numbers, but from the last board meeting to this board meeting, we've basically had about 600 calls for service regarding shots fired. 450 of those sound of shots call were called in by citizens. 123 of those calls were made by ShotSpotter activations. So we actually got 20% of the calls for service regarding shots being fired in the city of Kansas City from the ShotSpotter system. So it says a couple of things. Number one, there's way too much gunfire in the city of Kansas City, Missouri. Number two, the ShotSpotter location is well placed because basically 1% of the city's landmass is covered by ShotSpotter, and 20% of the calls for service related to sound of shots were initiated by the ShotSpotter system. We also monitor the Watch KC, which is basically a way for folks to collaborate with us. They can register their private security cameras. We do not monitor live feeds or anything like that. It's just a pointer system. It gives them the opportunity to partner with us. So in the case that an incident occurred, detectives would have the ability to look at the system, know that there is the possibility that cameras that have been registered are there, and they could discreetly contact the person or business owner that registered their cameras. It's a voluntary program. You can opt in, you can opt out, and we have been very happy with the results. We also monitor the Ring neighbor safety portal, very similar to the Watch KC. It basically, if you're familiar, the Ring doorbell company hosts it. It gives us an opportunity to look at crime trends that are happening. Folks in a social media sort of setting are able to transfer information and give information, share information, not only with their neighbors, but also with us, and we are able to contact them. And we also use several open source databases, social media, our reporting system. Basically, in instances where there's some sort of a violent crime that's occurring, we try to use resources that are available to us to contact, to give information to the officers that are on the street. But because they're dealing with a situation that is unfolding, we are able to do some more of the investigative work in case that is necessary. I tried to be as brief as possible, but if there are any questions, I am happy to answer.
So you mentioned ShotSpotter.
Yes, sir.
Have they been in touch with you about the updated training?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been in close contact with them. We're also evaluating, even though I gave you those numbers, we're also evaluating where the ShotSpotter locations are going to be deployed in the future and trying to do our best to optimize that relationship.
There is a possibility of moving within that map, or?
There is a possibility with everything related to technology that is out of our control. There might be a cost, and that's one of the things that we're also evaluating. But as far as where it is now, as I stated, there's clearly it's a high use location.
How do we decide if we wish to, I understand budget's always a question with it, but if we want to expand the use of ShotSpotter, thought being this, that while I understand we have it in a very good location, having lived close to there, just a little bit south, I remember being also a good location for gunshots, unfortunately. Is that something that we're evaluating and that there'll be a recommendation to the board on, or is that something that we just kind of think about in coordination with ShotSpotter?
It's a great question. It's a little bit above my pay grade, but I will say that we are constantly evaluating the highest and best use.
Because I will just remind, and all of you officers know, but maybe for some people watching, if you live in neighborhoods that have a decent number of gunshots, you get to a point where you don't call about them because they are regular enough. And so I'm heartened to hear about how many shots ShotSpotter is actually capturing so that we have that information. And I would hope if there are other neighborhoods, of which there are a few in this city, that present that same opportunity, we might be able to do that for a kind of a prioritization enforcement type of activities.
Aside from that, just want to thank you all for your committed dedication to the city and the community and the police department. And have a great day.
Thank you.
One more question, maybe,
Yes,
if you got a second.
I have.
That social media, as terms of through the, you've done some good with that in terms of identifying suspects. I remember one in particular that was.
If you're referring to like the Ring Neighbors portal and things of that nature, absolutely, yes. We have many instances where folks have given us information. The CIOs at the different division stations do a great job of monitoring those sort of things, and we do as well. But we have definitely had some very successful outcomes based on those partnerships.
The case submission reports begin on page 6. Tab C again. During the month of October, KCPD submitted a total of 329 cases to county prosecutors' offices. Charges were filed in 126 cases during the month. 60 cases were charged in custody and 66 warrants were issued. 24 cases were returned for additional work. 83 cases were declined during the month. This is considerably less than the month of September, when 130 cases were declined. From January 1 to October 31, 2021, we submitted 3,809 cases to state prosecutors' offices. We submitted about the same number of cases from January to October 2020. However, this year we had a 19% decrease in the total number of cases charged. This is largely a result of Jackson County revising their drug policy guidelines. However, we expect these numbers to begin to stabilize in the coming months. And subject to your question, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. For example, this daily homicide report goes to everybody, right? I mean, this is public information and goes to the Kansas City Star and everybody else.
The source, it's posted to our website every day, and it's public information.
And so we had a 18% reduction in homicides so far this year. And I think at the last meeting, you talked about nationwide number of homicides was up, and I've forgotten what number, 20% or something like that.
I'd have to check. I believe that right now it's 12 to 13%, and that's on top of last year, which were 30% higher than the previous year.
So we're down 18%, nationwide homicides are up 12%. But I never see it presented that way. How do we do that? How do we get that word out? That's not good. I mean, 135 is still a violent city, but it's 18% less than last year.
Yes, sir. And hopefully,
And probably more like 30% less than the national average.
hopefully, we're highlighting in the board meeting, and we'll just continue to try to put that out there where we can. A lot of the fruits from our public safety partnership are coming to fruition with our shoot review process that we have every Wednesday in our partnerships with the city, the prosecutor's office, our federal partners, and we think that's really showing dividends. But you're right, we do need to let people know that what we're doing here is working.
I'll just say this briefly on that point. One challenge of politics and public discourse, had a chat with actually the superintendent of schools in Kansas City about that too. Often community viewpoints stay frozen, sometimes too much so. And so if you've always lived in a violent city, you think it just stays as violent. If you've always thought the schools are questionable, you still think they are. And so I do think certainly that's why we all have communications departments to share what those changes are and the differences. But I would say the real way that we do it is just the volume, and you just keep sharing that time and again. There's something else the deputy chief mentioned that I think needs to be underscored, and the chief brought this up in a meeting we had recently, which is that despite the fact that most people center in on conflict because that's intriguing for folks, dueling quotes, anything of that sort, this department continues to work with everyone, really. Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, City Hall, and others to make sure that we're addressing issues long-term that affect public safety in Kansas City. And I think those discussions, as you noted, Deputy Chief, absolutely bear fruit and get more messengers as well. Because maybe it's one thing for us to say we've seen this positive change. It's another when you have the councilwoman for the East Side saying we want more officers, when you have a prosecutor perhaps at times say that this was wonderful detective work. And the more you get of that, I think you see a shifting narrative. So we just keep doing that along the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments or questions from board members, we will move to community outreach, social services program.
Good morning, Commissioners. Paul Lester filling in for Deputy Chief True this morning. I have a couple just brief presentations for you. The first one, we have Social Service Specialist Tamara McIntosh from our South Patrol Division. She's going to, I'm sorry?
Which tab?
Oh, I'm sorry, tab E.
Thank you.
She's going to present an initiative, recent initiative from South Patrol at one of our multifamily housing complexes.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Tamara McIntosh, the South Patrol Social Services Specialist. Working with me is a crime-free mental housing officer, Ashley Bradshaw, who's not here today. But this is something that we had come up with due to all the crime that's going out in Cloverleaf and the issues with the juveniles. So some of the problems that we have identified out there are, like I said, the violent crime amongst the kids with weapons, the aggravated assaults, residents that are not accounted for in apartments, meaning those that are there and they're not on a lease, that management has not caught yet, the lack of accountability by management, reporting of criminal activity by the residents. They're more calling on management instead of calling police for service. Conditions of the apartment complexes, the trash, the broken windows, anything you can think of there. Children not going to school. You can go there at any point of the day and you can see kids of ages 7 to 17 that are not in school. The juveniles right now are the ones causing the majority of the problems with the fights, the bullying, kids getting jumped off of school when they get off of school buses. Their cameras are not working properly right now, so don't have any video of anything at this point. Last month, 75 calls to Cloverleaf for the month of October. And excuse me, right now, they're in the process of the nuisance property, which includes the city prosecutor's office, KCPD, HUD, and the ownership of Cloverleaf property. There's a meeting that occurs every month to discuss what Cloverleaf is doing, what's working and what's not working.
And Cloverleaf is located where?
It's off of 71, 104th and 71 Highway. Yeah, it's on the
Okay.
And they've had
edge.
decent shooting and homicide activity over the years, right?
Does the management respond to the department? In other words, you said the residents call the management. Then does the management call us, or do they not want us there?
Sometimes they do, or management will call us or call the crime-free officer and let her know what's going on. But prefer that residents call police first
course.
and then
I agree.
Yeah.
But when they don't,
Yeah.
we still want to know what's going
Right.
on.
We've
Thank you.
had the management, and just to give a little history, management has changed over there. I don't know how many times. And I think in the process of yet again changing, and that has been part of the problem, is that when a management company is no longer interested in the property, they do nothing. And that sometimes can take months. It can take a year before the transfer takes place to a new ownership. So we've had real issues with trying to hold people accountable of the owner base, and the management company at this complex in particular has been a real challenge to South Patrol. And that's why Tamara and everyone has been working so hard to try and bring, prevent violence. As the mayor has pointed out, we've had a couple homicides out there, and we're trying to prevent that from occurring again.
Has ownership been changing as well?
It's in the process yet again, I believe. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but if a new company picks it up, we're hoping that it's better positioned to deal with a property like this. What we seem to get is management companies who are not in positions to deal with the problem property to the caliber that we have here.
I'm not talking about the management companies. I'm talking about the actual owners of the
We're
company.
talking to ownership. It's supposed, but almost every time we have an ownership change, we have a management change also.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there, Tamara. I
Has there been any
apologize.
discussion with the prosecutors about declaring it a nuisance property?
And that's what she was just talking with the city, that we do that through the city.
So, as far as ownership, this owner, he's been the owner for some years now. The management companies since I've been working here, they've changed like 5 times. So now, like Chief said, each management company gets in, decides it's way more than they want to deal with, and so they just stop trying. But that's where the nuisance property comes in at, and having those meetings to discuss everything that's going on, and each time it's the same things over and over again. And they try to address those issues, but they just can't seem to do it. And without the owners helping them and funding the things that they need to do, they can't get it done. Because there's a problem with also the funding part of it, him wanting to put money into the property. Going back to the juveniles, one of the reasons that we decided that we needed to get out there more is because there is more crime being committed by the kids out at Cloverleaf. And we're finding that they are just not going to school. Grandview, we got a partnership with Grandview with the superintendent, the principals, the behavioral interventionist, social worker over the school district to determine how can we help or how can we get these kids in school. And we found that majority of the crime that's occurring are with the children that are not attending. And they're like on the top of the list as far as Grandview School is concerned, those ones not going to school. We also found that that people are having kids out there and we don't even know that they're even on the lease. A lot of juveniles can't find them, don't know who they belong to or what apartment that they belong to. One particular apartment complex or apartment maintenance went in. This apartment has only like 13 to 16-year-olds. Parents are never there, never around, and there are weapons on the bed. And we only found out because maintenance man told management, and then when we came out, management decided to tell us. So the things that we're doing, like I said, we are partnered with the Grandview School District. Pastor Lenny with IHOP helps a lot with things out there as far as like if you need clothing for some kids, or because he helped out with the family where the child was going to school because he didn't have any clothes because they were in an apartment that had a lot of water damage and mold. And so they moved him to the next apartment, but they lost everything. So that child, because he's in middle school, he needed some clothes to go to school. Partnered with Healthy Families. They come out and inspect a lot, encouraging residents to call them when they do have issues in the home with the mold, with the water. If things are not working properly, we've been out there like 3 times with Healthy Homes, and it's working. At least the residents feel like they have somebody else to call on if they need things to be fixed in the apartments. Working closely with the Division of Family Services. If there is a hotline, I make sure to follow up on the hotline, and majority of the time go out with the investigator involving the child, if it's abuse or truancy, to make sure that things are followed up on and working as they should. Between the school district and us identifying the top families that are truant in school and are causing some of the criminal activity out at Cloverleaf. Meeting once a month with the school district officials, the principal, the superintendent, coming up with a plan to get with the families to get the attendance going and kids not being truant out of Cloverleaf. We have been out there weekly, actually, following up on each family, or if there's a new family that we come up on that comes across over the weekend from having any type of disturbance or issues with the youth out there, we go out and follow with that family as soon as we find out. Building a relationship with the juvenile probation, making sure that any kids that we do come across that's at least 14 to 17 to see if they've had any issues with juvenile, if they do have a PO. That way I can connect with the probation officer and set up a meeting to where we can discuss if that child needs to be on house arrest or what other things can be done. So recently, the families assisted, the single mom of 3 got clothes for her 11-year-old son so he can attend school with the help of Pastor Lenny with IHOP. He met her, the family met him at Walmart, and he was able to actually got everybody clothes. The single mom of 5, she didn't have any transportation. The children were not going to school because they needed to be vaccinated. So myself and Officer Bradshaw went and picked up the kids and the mom, took them down to the Jackson County Health Department and made sure that all the kids got their vaccinations and they were at school the next day. Then we had a single mom with a twin middle
And may I
school.
just ask, how late into the school year was that you got them vaccinated so they could have their regular vaccines to attend school?
2 weeks ago.
That's unbelievable.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead. but-
Yep.
Wow.
So even with the son that got the clothes, it was the same thing. He hadn't been to school since school started.
I want to point out, it is unbelievable, Mayor, but think if we weren't involved. I mean, think if Tamara and our crime-free multi-housing officer were not involved in what is going on here, they would still be home and not vaccinated. So I frame all this, and this is why I wanted this discussion when we talked about it, because obviously our interventions here in this thing are making a huge difference. And that's what I want the board to see, is that our social worker and that combination of working with our officers is making a huge difference in places where we're very much trying to prevent crime, and getting those kids in school will very much help prevent crime.
And the last, this single mom of twin middle school girls, we came upon them because the girls had got into a fight with other children in the complex, and mom was willing to talk to us and made us aware that one of the kids had threatened her daughters that if she gets off the school bus, that there was going to be a fight. And there's actually a female victim and the male suspect. And this kid doesn't walk around with a gun. He's only 15, causing a lot of problems out there. So came back to the station, talked to our Impact, and Impact made it their duty to be there when the school bus came to where this child would not be jumped. And somehow it got around and nobody showed up.
Can that happen? Can somebody from Impact be there every day when the child?
No, we felt like if they start seeing more presence, that will kind of deter them to know that they see us walking around weekly. They see us going to different apartment buildings, apartment complexes. I mean, not complexes, just the apartments themselves. And so they know now that somebody's watching, when before they didn't see that. So now security has upped their game some too, because they're starting to actually go around and be visible and walking the property more. So they're seeing all this presence, and I think it might be deterring some of this. And our goals in building bridges here to identify and assist 2 families a month with Grandview social worker and crime free and myself. So those top families that the children are not going to school, those are the ones that we're going to tackle to see what all resources they need, what kind of help that they need in order to be more sustainable. To create a safe and suitable and stable environment with a partnership with Grandview School District, ensuring all kids of Cloverleaf are attending school. This last one I started working on last week, implementing truancy court with combat in the assistance of Marvin Moses for the Grandview School District. I didn't realize that Grandview School District did not have RSOs or any type of presence in the school. So if children are not coming to school, the principal and the admin can refer these kids to juvenile court, which makes the parent accountable for them. So since that was not happening, I contacted Combat and Marvin Moses to see how we can get that done ASAP. Because without the accountability of the parents as well, they're just at home. The kids are at home and they're causing issues. So maybe if they know that there's a fine coming or there's some type of something, that they'll be more apt to get their child to school every day. We want to do some community events out there. Cookies for Cloverleaf, door to door with the Grandview School District, myself and Crime Free, to have some of the parents or the school principals, teachers and principals make cookies. We'll bag them up really cute, take them, door to door for the kids and the families. Candy canes and packets for parents, something I was going to do, make a packet to where they have all the information they need for food pantry, clothing, utility assistance, healthy homes. So just so they have that available, just so they know that there is somebody that they can call on. They're just not out there by themselves. And also trying to work with KCATA to see if somehow, some way, there could be a bus that comes out to Cloverleaf, because they're out there on that island, nowhere to go. If you don't have a car, you're just at home all day. So people are not able to get their kids to daycare. They're not out there working. They're not doing anything. So I think we have this uproar in crime because everybody's at home. And that is it. Any questions?
I want to say thank you for your work. This is very important. Thank you.
When you mentioned vaccine, because we are in this vaccine period of people talking about COVID, you were talking about the regular vaccinations that children are supposed to get before they go to school. All right. I wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
There is really a nationwide crisis going on since COVID of children not going to school. In fact, I just had my school board meeting last night, and our attendance is down about 20%, and we're trying to figure out why. We have a very small population that has enrolled 100% virtual. So we know that those kids are on virtually, but then there's about 20% of our student body that we just can't find them. We don't know why they are. Some of them enrolled and never came to school. Some of them never enrolled. We've traditionally had 520, 530 students. We're at about 383 in seat, and then another maybe 20 virtually. So it's a real problem, and then it leads to crime.
Right. And
So
that's what we found out, that the kids that are not accounted for, they're at the complex, but they haven't enrolled for school. And so this way they know that there are eyes on them. We're looking for you. You should be in school. And if there is something virtual, I know that Missouri, if the parent says that their child is virtual, there's really nothing you can do. There's no accountability anywhere. But Grandview does have a form that the parents have to fill out so that they have record that the child is virtual. They can't just call and say, hey, my child's virtual, they're not coming back. So for those parents that say that they're virtual, I kind of ask, how, what, when, where, like what program are you using? And do you have a computer? Do you have Wi-Fi? If you don't, how can I get there for you? Or I got a connection that can get you Wi-Fi if you don't have it. Because most of that is an excuse. Your child is
Right.
virtual, but they're outside running around breaking windows. Mm-mm. So those are the ones that I kind of look to, because I'm like, if they're virtual, that's fine. You have every right to do that. But let me give you the resources you need so that the child can actually go to school, because it's important.
Let me just ask or say a few things. First of all, when I was growing up and staying at some of these spots of these types, we didn't have this. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, because it is making a change in some kids' lives. I was always blessed to have a wonderful education, but there were a bunch of other kids that were just hanging out and who ended up getting themselves in a bunch of trouble as the years went on. So you're breaking that cycle, which is key. And maybe the thing that provides the most gravity to me in this presentation is how many complexes like this we might have in other parts of the city, even elsewhere in South Zone. And so when you talk about, I guess it'd be your collaboration with the city attorney's office on the nuisance charges, as Mr. Kenner was noting, with apartments and that sort of thing, are we often able to get much legal ground there? Or is it usually, if we say, and as mayor, I'm not supposed to attack private business owners, but nevertheless, raggedy apartment A, not saying that's them, but if we were to say, y'all can't keep doing this, is that usually something where you just let the city attorney's office know and they try to see what they can do? Or are we just at the beginning of that process?
Let me jump in here. The goal is to get compliance, right? The goal is to get them to work with us, not to necessarily file legal action. We want the management, ownership, whoever, to come to the table and start having constructive conversation. That's the goal. So we use the city mechanisms to help achieve that goal sometimes when we can't get it done ourselves. The last resort is to go all the way to some sort of legal, response to this. So, but the idea of getting in front of the nuisance business task force is to have them sit down. Then they have to come back with a plan, and we try and follow up and make sure that plan is being carried through. And those are the things that we are looking for from ownership. And I will say to this one, Mayor, this complex is uniquely situated because it is such an island. It's on a frontage road. There's one road that goes back and forth to it. The complex is, the buildings are, I mean, the construction is just, it's all very unique out there, and there's nothing there. There's no amenities for the kids. There's nothing. And that is a huge issue with this complex. So yes, do we have issues at other complexes? Yes, we do. This one has been it's very unique in its challenges. And then I want to give a shout out to Tamara and Officer Bradshaw, because they have worked tirelessly to try and make changes out there, which we haven't seen in 20 years, like I said.
But do we do this all over the city? I mean, there are other.
Oh, yes, we are engaged. Our crime-free multi-housing officers at each station, and they're engaged with multi-housing units in each zone. And obviously, we try and focus on those with the most issues, but they're supposed to make contact and have relationships with all of the units, whether they provide some sort of training. And we have a program in which the management company and the managers can actually be trained in it, work with us, and have an idea what we do. And we have many complexes that that, hey, we have no problem. They pick up the phone and call right away and say, we got an issue, we need to get this worked out. And we have great relationships with them due to our contacts through this program, which I think is a great program that helps our crime-free multi-housing officers work with management to try and get management to make sure they're doing the right things in our complex. That's the goal.
I know one other challenge that you may face, although this is good for these young people, is that a lot of times people move in and out of these complexes with some level of frequency too. And so the child we've helped may be ended up somewhere different, all of that. So I'm just glad you got them into the schools for this year. So hopefully that builds some relationships they can have and value from them. But you're to be commended. It's exceptional work.
Next month, we'll have an update on crime-free multi-housing. I will have them come in and as a recap to this and have them give a little direction on what they're doing, what they're working on, so you can see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before I call up the next presenter, just to add on to what the chief said briefly, Tamara's being very humble. The hours and hours of work that her and Officer Bradshaw and the men and women of South Patrol have put into this is unbelievable. And the partnerships they've leveraged with the school district for truancy, KC Healthy Homes, the potential of the ATA coming on board would be huge for them. So lots of work still to be done, but we're proud of them. They've done a fantastic job. And like I said, she was very humble. The amount of hours that got into this is unbelievable, and they are making a difference. Next up, Sergeant Sean Hess from our crisis intervention team has just a very brief presentation along with his staff.
That's not in our book.
No, they was just both from the community presentations, ma'am. Yep.
Surprise.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sean Hess. I'm the supervisor for the Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT unit, within Kansas City. I've been asked today to present to you guys some of our community partnerships, some innovations that we're working on, and kind of go over some of our training numbers and stats on that. I'd like to introduce you to Officer Mark Canovi. He also works with the CIT unit and is less long-winded than I am, so we'll get Mark up here to speak in just a second. But if you have any questions or need me to expound on anything, just please ask. But Kansas City has long been on the forefront of working with training our officers on mental illness, working with our community partners and our providers. We've had CIT training in Kansas City for 2 decades now. That doesn't really seem possible to me. We'll be coming up on our 21st year next year. And it's important to understand that we weren't just the first agency within the state to start this training, but within the Midwest. We've exported it throughout Missouri. You'd be hard pressed today to find a agency or county that is some way involved in CIT or has a CIT trained officer. So eat your heart out, St. Louis. We were the first, right? And going forward now, we also formed the first CIT council in the state, and also the coalition that's working to work within all these communities within Missouri. We've exported CIT to Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Arkansas, Oklahoma. We've trained over 8,000 officers, deputies, agents, troopers. You named it, we've trained them on CIT and continue to advance the training. We now have 3 specialty classes to go along with the basic training, and just really working hard to keep that going. We started trauma-informed care before anybody knew what that was, to go on with the CIT training, officer wellness, emotional survival. We had de-escalation before that was cool. It was called active listening when we first started, and now it's the hot topic today in policing. The list goes on and on with what we've been involved with in the first. In 2015, Kansas City dedicated its own first standalone CIT unit, which was myself and 1 officer at that time. We've grown to 5 officers today. Officer John Timmemeyer and Trika Humphrey are in the back, are 2 more of our members that work in the unit. And Officer J.D. Petty is the 5th one. He's actually at Lee Summit Police Department today teaching our telecommunications dispatcher class. So you can see we've really evolved and continued to do that. Before I get on a long-winded turn, I'm going to let Mark talk about some of the things we're doing with our patrol support.
Sure. So our main topic that we do with our CIT unit is support our patrol as much as we can. So we do that by going after the ones that are having the most calls for service with a mental health or behavioral health crisis and getting them engaged with treatment services. So we'll go out with a lot of different community partners to make that engagement. But it's really redirecting them from police services, because a lot of times a mental health crisis is not a crime. There's nothing wrong with having a mental illness. There's no crime in that. So what we want to do is get them in touch with the community mental health centers that can address that situation. So we'll deal with it when it does become a criminal matter, when there's some type of violence, or they're calling police a lot. That's when we get involved. But our main goal is diverting them back to the right people. So a lot of times we're working with families, working with courts, trying to figure out, hey, how do we get this person into the right treatment facility? So sometimes the family members, they're the key, is having that support system at home, getting them connected to the right people. Maybe they should be calling the behavioral health crisis line instead of calling 911. A lot of times they can help out. And I'm sure Sean's going to talk about 988 and some of that stuff that's coming down the road here. But we'll work really closely with DHSS, a lot with the children's division here. But it's really getting people connected to the right groups. Our social services unit, we reach out to them a lot. Several times where someone's in a mental health crisis, but really what they need is some support from, I've had social services come out and provide groceries for someone, and that solved their issue. That's all that they really needed at that time. So we do a CIT, we do a co-responding. So we go out with our community mental health liaisons or community behavioral health liaisons. So we work with each of the 5 mental health centers locally: SWOPE, Tri-County, Comprehensive, Rediscover, and then we also work with University Health, which is Truman now. And then we work with the Veterans Administration as well. So all of them, these 5 ladies here, we've actually added a few more. The governor of Missouri added 50 new positions this year. So each of them are getting a few more at each agency. But they look at all those reports that we're generating. So over the last 5 years, I bet we do about 4,500 reports, mental health reports, that we average a year. So they get all those reports and they can follow up with the treatment teams. So just how people lie to police sometimes, they also lie to their healthcare provider. So, when we have a report saying, hey, they said they were using, they're not taking their medication, they're self-medicating with some type of narcotic, we can put that in a report, and their treatment team or their doctor could get that and kind of develop a better plan on what's best for this person. So that's kind of the main goal of our program. So our unit, us 4 in our unit, we've done over 360 calls for service this year, over just under 500 follow-ups and contacts. Like I said, we're trying to focus on those ones that are causing the most need and resources for our community. So the ones, we say 20 calls a month is extreme. So those are the ones that we're going out, is trying to reduce those calls that officers are going out with. EMS are transporting all these people. They're high utilizers of the emergency department. It's almost all the same group of people, and those are who we're trying to reach out to and engage into treatment and get them into the right facility.
I'm going to kind of jump onto the CIT training, what we've been doing. So we have the basic class, which is the core class. That's the 40-hour block. And we try to do about 5 classes a year on that. The goal would be to get 25 to 35 officers in that class. Unfortunately, the need far outweighs our supplies on that. So we typically end up with 50 to 60 in a class. Not ideal, but it's what we work with. The vet, youth, and telecommunications are our specialty classes. The vet's 3-day. We do that once a year. The youth is a 4-day class. We do it once a year. And then the telecommunications for our call takers and dispatchers are a 2-day class. And we're looking at trying to develop a hybrid model for next year as well, but for the telecommunications, where it'll be 1 day in the classroom and then 2 days online. Our mental health awareness training is a 2-day specialty class for KCPD patrol officers. when Chief Smith took over, he was wanting to make sure that all the officers working the field had the resources and experience on working with the mentally ill and the information. And so we kept our CIT as a voluntary program still, and the mental health awareness is for the officers that were not CIT trained to go through that 2-day class to get their feet wet on mental health issues, diagnosis, in-services and treatment and de-escalation. And then we do in-service training with our de-escalation. I think this year we did de-escalation and probate warrants, talking about it, and a lot of other specialty training as well. Like today at noon, I'm going to be out talking to the new sergeant's school. So, and we do countless city presentations throughout the city, autism panels, suicide prevention panels, and working on different resources with that. Just kind of throw out some numbers on what we've done this year on training. We've had 222 officers go through our basic vet youth class, not counting the telecommunications we got going this week. 51 KCPD officers have attended the training, the basic class this year. And we have 35 registered for our December class, which we're sticking to 60 big class. So just giving you the totals, and I'm sorry I don't have the dispatcher. I think we're having 40 go through this week, at least Summit, and I know a few of those are ours from Kansas City. But for the last 5 years, we had 1,566 officers trained throughout the metropolitan area on CIT, which is pretty impressive if you don't want to think that 2020 we didn't have any training due to COVID. And the mental health awareness, I think we're like 542 officers have been trained between 2018 and 2020 on that. And that kind of shows you where we are department-wide CIT trained. We have 533 sworn members department-wide that have gone through the CIT training, 372 that work Patrol Bureau, which is a 45% of our Patrol Bureau officers have been through the CIT training. And then you'll see the mental health awareness Patrol Bureau trained is 99%. It should be 100, but we do have promotions and transfers from people that have come out of Patrol Bureau. So there's a few that have yet to get trained on that we'll catch up later this year. But I think we're just doing pretty much the recruits now. We did the recruits last week as well. And then the bottom stat, I kind of want to show you. Research Development Institute does an analysis of all of our CIT reports. And they showed for the year of 2020, when we were still doing the mental health awareness training, that 91% of all CIT reports were completed by an officer that either had the CIT training or mental health awareness training. So the boots on the ground are actually the guys that are trained in this, are the ones making contact. I think that's kind of an impressive number on that. And I want to talk, let Mark talk a little bit about our homeless outreach team, our HOT team, and kind of some of the innovations that they've been doing.
Yeah, me and Officer Timmermeyer, we do our homeless outreach program. So what we do is we go out with a lot of the social services, University Health, Hope Faith, Restart, the VA, but they all come out with us, and we'll go try to outreach the homeless population that are the ones that are really isolated in the camps in the woods. We call them the chronically homeless, the ones that are, usually 1+ more year homeless. Try to develop that rapport and build that relationship. My main role there is making sure that the camp is safe. Once it's safe for them to go and do outreach on their own afterwards, they can follow up after the fact and kind of have some of those outreach and have some good rapport with that person. And ideally, hopefully I can break down some barriers of officers when I'm going into that camp, knowing that I'm not going in there just, laying down the law, I guess you would say. I'm there as a, trying to assess the situation and get them the right treatment. We also do have a community paramedic from the Kansas City Fire Department that comes out with us as well. So we can address any of those needs right there, emergency needs that someone might have.
This is a few pictures of that. They do quite a bit of outreach and contacts in regards to that. And these are just some of our community partners. I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but bottom line is that if they work with the most at risk in Kansas City, and that is the mentally ill or substance abuse, we have a partnership and relationship with them. And we really work with almost everybody within Kansas City, including the specialty courts, the emergency room enhancements, is basically hospital diversion, the crisis center, we're a big partner in that, and work hand in hand with them to try to reduce the calls and our contacts out there. I do want Mark to talk about if I need help real quick, and some of the work we're doing with the developmental community and getting the equipment in the cars for the officers.
Sure, yeah. So one really cool thing that we had earlier this year was Variety Kansas City helped partner with the FOP Lodge, and we were able to get some autism sensory kits and get those in the vehicles. So now we have some of those in our vehicles. So that's a great option for when we come in touch with someone there. And then the other thing, we partnered with If I Need Help, which is an organization out of California. It's almost like a registry system out there for people with disabilities that they offer up their information into that. But I partnered with Councilwoman Hall and Summit Future Foundation. And we were able to get some tags, and we're trying to build up that database here locally. And hopefully in the future, we might be able to link some of that with our CAD system. That way, when we're going to an address, we might be able to have some of that information ahead of time that, hey, this is someone with a disability. We might need to come at this from a different angle. So some of those things are in work, but just really, really appreciate all the work with Heather Hall and Summit Future Foundation helped with that.
Just a real brief, that was all we were to provide today to kind of tip the tip of the iceberg about what CIT does. There's a lot of other facets of the job that we work with, and it's all an evolving job for all of us. But is there any questions or anything in regards to that?
You all do great work. I can tell you that. I had no idea that many people had been trained through your efforts. Is there a mental health tactical team per se that goes out, when there's a call that says we're dealing with a mental health issue?
So we do work with the high risk, and it's usually my guys that go out on those high risk situations. We work with JTTF, the Joint Terrorist Task Force, the FBI. Sometimes they'll have information on a potential active shooter, school at risk reports. And so we'll follow up with those. We'll follow up if Mark's also on the hostage negotiation team. So he'll get out on a lot of the Op 100 call outs. And so if they, for some reason, won't stay at the scene, they determine that this isn't meeting the criteria for them to either make entry or stay, we'll follow up with those people if they have mental illness and work with the families. We've done that several times and take them into protective custody at a less higher risk situation. Maybe they're not on alcohol or drugs or come down on what their crisis they're in. But it's mainly us, and we work with our community behavioral health liaisons that go out with us on these calls.
Gentlemen, I have a comment for you and a question. First, thank you for presenting and the work you do. At City Council, there's a resolution that was recently adopted. It was not introduced by me, relating to homelessness and having a process for intervention at camps and those sorts of things. I don't know if you're in that conversation. Good. All right. You are.
Task Force, so.
Sounds like you should lead it. And so thank you for that. And I appreciate your role with that, because as you know, that's been one of the more significant issues. It's always been around, but now in more public settings that we're seeing. A question I have in that area is, how do we enforce, for lack of a better term, areas of known significant drug activity and sales at encampments and those sorts of things? And I know it's hard to just run in and disturb everything that's happening, but is it just kind of going back regularly and trying to get people out of there so you remove the threat? But I just appreciate some discussion on that.
I think a lot of that is getting the right agencies there to the scene. Getting if it's University Health or Truman, whatever, Rediscover, getting their advocates there. They got some great peer support coordinators there with those agencies, specialists, that if they came there, hey, I live this, I've been here before, and kind of come from that avenue. I think that's the best way that we can attack those issues and kind of get the best results from it. Because really, with the drug use, unfortunately, with mental health and drug use, when it's combo, which a lot of times it is, it's hard to force someone into treatment, because at that point, they're making that conscious decision to use that illegal drug. And that's where the courts and the mental health, they're like, hey, we can't force someone they're making that decision on their own. And that's a lot of the challenges that we do find is, is this mental health? Is this substance abuse? which came first? And the same with homeless. Sometimes, people are homeless because of their addiction. Sometimes they're homeless because their mental health issue. Sometimes they have an addiction, and then became mentally ill because the trauma and everything that goes along with being chronically homeless for an extended period. So there's a lot that goes into it. I'm sure you're well aware of that, but those are some of those topics we're talking with the homeless task force.
And a big thing is we're looking at housing first. Instead, it used to be that, we wanted them off the drugs, back on their mental health medication before we tried to house them. Now we're doing that backwards. We're housing them first and then trying to get them help for their addiction or mental illness second or third, because the housing is a main component of that. So the VA and other partners that we're working with have moved that slowly forward to do what's called housing first. And that helps. But Mayor, like you said, there's sometimes the homeless will attract the people that are house selling drugs because that's their clientele, and it's hard. My guys don't do enforcement action. They're going out there solely to build partnership, relationship, and resources. And if it's enforcement action, then we usually rely on the district impact people to help clear out the camps and stuff like that. They just hop from one place to another, and we're going to have contact with them again. And I want them to have a good relationship with my office.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Sergeant Burke is going to set up the final community outreach, just our slides of the month for Patrol Bureau. While he's doing that, we'll say what's known at this table that may not be known to everybody else is our CIT program is recognized nationally. Many of agencies have contacted us and used us as a model and best practices in CIT. And Sergeant Hess has been on the national stage several times presenting that. So
I'll just say,
very good program.
Sorry to interrupt, Major. As someone who is in the community a decent amount, I've seen both of those officers, particularly quite a bit, other CIT officers. And so the national recognition is noted, but strong local recognition for their involvement in the community. And it's thanked and appreciated.
Briefly, go ahead, Dan. October 28th was National First Responders Day, and KCPD, along with our other public safety partners within the city, celebrated that. Just a few photos from that day. Next, I think last month we presented some trunk or treat events. We participated in several more after that board meeting. This was at the East Patrol division here, but I think all said, there was we either partnered with or held or attended over a dozen of the trunk or treat events throughout the city. So neat picture there of an aspiring officer. Chief Smith presented Sergeant Bobby King with a Chief's coin for her efforts in capturing a homicide suspect. She was working off duty at a local high school and was made aware of a suspicious party in the parking lot. When she encountered that party, a foot chase began and a struggle then ensued. She was able to get that subject into custody, who was found to be a homicide suspect, and he was on kind of a crime spree. So we're proud of Sergeant King there, and Chief Smith presented her with a coin to recognize her for her work, especially while working an off-duty job.
During the arrest, the suspect, you can see her finger bit her down to the bone, and taking her into custody. It was a very active situation on which she had just committed homicides just hours earlier.
The suspect was a female too.
Yes.
Major Ivy trying to play basketball. We started a new initiative where we took the PAL, Police Athletic League, out to South Patrol. That started, I believe, was it last Friday, or maybe the Friday before. Time runs together, but they're currently meeting every Friday through November and December. Obviously, no charge for that, and people can register at kcpal.org. So just trying to get that beyond the East Patrol footprint there and get that out in the community more. We're partnering with several faith-based organizations and community partners to help deliver some holiday meals, and you can register with that. Is it up there? No. HickmanMillsSCEC.org, and we're gonna, like I said, partner with those and deliver some meals to the community for those in need. Officer Rick Jones from Shoal Creek Patrol Division made an appearance at an in-home daycare to read to the children while we enjoyed some unusually warm fall weather. So out in the driveway there was Sergeant Jones. For Veterans Day, as you're aware, we have many current former military members on the department. Pictured there is our own Captain Nate Simicek. He's the operations officer for the 35th Combat Aviation Brigade in Sedalia. That's him in Afghanistan, where he was deployed in 2013 as an Apache helicopter pilot, so representing KCPD there. And lastly, our annual escort of the Mayor's Christmas tree to Crown Center there. The traffic unit does that every year to make sure once it hits the city limits, it gets into Crown Center safely. The remainder of the Patrol Bureau information is under tab E, which consisted of the median response times and the traffic division summary. Be happy to take any questions. If not, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you for this presentation. It's very helpful to see the other areas than just patrol.
My pleasure.
A lot of great things going on, and thank you all for all that you do. So if that ends your presentation, Department Staffing, Deputy Chief Mike Hicks.
Good morning. I'm going to start off by throwing this over to Deputy Chief Doug Niemeyer. He has a presentation for you.
Is there something in the book we should be looking at?
There will be after
That.
yes.
Thank you.
Good morning. Today we're going to have retired Officer Derek Bruns. He runs the North Lane Career Center law enforcement section out of the. It's located next to the Platte County High School, and I've been part of this advisory board now for, I believe it's been 16 years. They've been running this organization, and we talk about how we're having trouble recruiting. We talk about how we're having trouble with people that want to be in law enforcement. I think you're going to hear a different story today. I myself invested in this group 16 years ago. Many members of our department have invested in this group, and I think it's showing, and he will talk about how many officers we have on this police department that come from this program alone, and what the potential is, and how he has built this program, and what future holds, and what we can get from recruitment from this. So I will turn it over. They have a presentation for you. I think you'll be very impressed with what's going on.
Good morning. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of the program, we started in 2007, 16 years, that's 14 years. The first 2 years, we were doing a summer school program, and then it developed into a full-time program there in 2007. And yes, Colonel Niemeyer has been a part of my program all those 16 years. We started out with 35 students in 2007, and today, now we've had 646 students that have gone through the program itself. We were the fourth law enforcement program to start in the state. The first two started over in St. Louis back in the 70s, and then Sykeston, Missouri started one the year before us. Since then, since we started ours, we are now 22 programs across the state. And I am happy to say and proud to say that a lot of them began through our program, through the success of our program over the last few years. We're serving 17 high schools in the Northland, and those are all listed there. I have an asterisk by the 35 there. We average 35 openings every year to take in new students, but we have over 120 applicants almost yearly. The reason of the asterisk is we have grown our program, and I'm going to get a little bit further into that here just a little bit later, but we have grown the program to 80 students, and this is why this year, we have taken in 52 new first-year students. We are a 2-year program or a 1-year program. You can come in as a junior and then stay for the 2 years, junior, senior, or you can come in as a senior, what I like to call is a one-hit wonder. You come in for the one single year. We have a shadow experience, and this is how students apply. You just can't just go into the counselor and say, hey, I want to go be in that program. You have to actually apply, and you go through a hiring, basically like a hiring process to say, get into the academy for the police department. They come and visit our program, spend the day with us, if you will, to kind of talk to current students and see what it is that we are about. This is also for the students to see if we are a good fit for them also. They go before an oral board process made up of current students. Myself and my co-instructor are not a part of that. They actually sit by themselves in a chair in front of one of my majors, the two of my lieutenants, a sergeant, and a cadet. And then they also have to take a written knowledge exam. This is not really for entrance. It's just to show us exactly how much of civics, government, and law do they really know before coming into the program. And then also, we don't have anything to do with this one, but they also go into a point system from their sending schools concerning their discipline, GPA, and attendance records. And this is from the sending school. Have they shown and been responsible and accountable enough in their earlier years of high school to be able to go up to the Northland Career Center? This is for all programs up there. I want to introduce, this is, excuse me, Cadet Allie Cadu, and she is in her first year right now. So tell us about it.
Good morning. So I've been interested in CSI ever since I was a kid. That's just always been a fascination to me. And I heard about this program when I was in middle school. It was 8th grade. They came to a job fair for us, and they showed us what this program is. And ever since then, I knew that I wanted to be in this program. It was my sophomore year when I decided to apply for this. I went to one of our shadow days, seeing what it was like to be in the program, like how the program is operated, and what are all the benefits that you can get through it. So after my shadow day, and I just fell in love. I knew I wanted to be here. So as a first year, we get to experience the paramilitary discipline. It's not even just for first year. Everybody gets that experience. We have high expectations here for all of us, and it's a great working environment to be in, and I really enjoy being here. It's helping me build further knowledge for the future career I want to pursue. Thank you.
Wait, what's the career you want to pursue?
CSI. I want to become a crime scene investigator.
Great, thanks.
Of our 71 students this year, we started out with 80. We had one move away, have to follow the parents, and then 8 others dropped the course. And I don't hold it against any of them in the sense that they came, they tried it, they figured out, hey, this is not for me. So we've lost 9 since we began the school year. We're down to 71. We have 52% that are female and 48% that are male. I look back over all the years, and this holds pretty true through the 16 years, that we have always been a little bit stronger on the female side, the non-traditional side, than we have the male side. But I can get into a little bit more of that here, how many actually became police officers as opposed to other areas under the umbrella of law enforcement. Our diversity this year, we have 5 Black students, 3 Latino students, 2 Asian students, and 2 others. I think those are like South Polynesian, Kurdish, and Polynesian. Okay. We also have representation from the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, the LGBTQ plus area, and individualized learning plan, which are IEP students. I think we have about 17 of those this year. Our structure, this is how we have built our program. We have a ranking system from, I have a major in each class, 2 captains, 4 lieutenants, 8 sergeants, and then from there it goes down into the cadets. We have level ups, and these patches that are across the bottom of the screen there, those are earned by the students as they go. As you can see, they are putting those, they have those where the badge should be. I'm a believer in that. My students, they do not leave the area with their uniforms on. I can't put them in that danger, if you will, out in public, and I will not put a badge on them until they become police officers. So we have this, they are military morale patches that we have purchased over the years. The students themselves have chosen these particular patches. If you look, there's kind of a little bit of a theme of dogs there, but they earn each one of those patches. They have certain criteria they have to do to earn that patch. The top patch being the American sheepdog over at the far right, meaning that they are the protector of the flock, that type of thing. The general orders, we have 16 general orders. They're in the yellow. Each student has to learn those by heart and be able to recite those on command and or tell us about certain portions of any one of the general orders at any time. The 341, that is a 341 process in that we police our own, we take care of ourselves, in that we have very, very few discipline problems in our program, unlike some of the other programs there at the school. We have our own process in that if you violate one of the general orders, every student carries a 341 paper in their pocket, and if you're witnessed violating a general order, then they pull your 341 and then they go before a court system of their peers, and they get to state their guilt or not guilty, and then a jury of their peers will decide their guilt. If they are found guilty to have violated a general order, then they will have one of 3 consequences. One of those consequences could be digging a hole out in our parade area 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet and then filling it back up. Or you could be on what we call a FOD walk, which is foreign object debris, going out and picking up trash. And the other one was what? Sweeping our sidewalks of grass and or snow coming up. So those are the only 3 consequences that you have. If something were much further, or someone did anything in a high school setting, then naturally you would go upstairs to the director or assistant director. And Major Audrey Strope would like to tell you a little bit about our daily process.
Yeah, good morning. Like you said, I'm Major Audrey Strope, but just a little bit about our day in the classroom. Students know from the get-go the expectations are high from the moment they walk in the door. As soon as they walk in the door, they are expected to turn in their phones into the armory. After they do that, they will go to the locker rooms where they'll have a few minutes to change out, get dressed, get any materials that they need to prepare themselves for the day. And then they go out into our tech room and wait until one of my captains instruct them to squat up. Once they are instructed to squat up, then we all run outside and take our places out there. We'll do a roll call like you saw. We'll say the the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States, and then as well as our Skills USA pledge and Skills USA is the organization in which we go through. After that, we'll do a small series of calisthenics, so push-ups, sit-ups, just to stay in that disciplinary mindset. And then after that, we'll get up, form them back in their formations, and they'll be dismissed inside where we can start our day. Once they get inside there, they should wait behind their chair until they're instructed to sit. Once they're instructed to sit, we say it as a whole. This is our creed. We think as individuals and react as a team. And that is another mindset that we have, is we're always working as a team as well as our independent selves. We'll do our class day, whatever lecture it may be or hands-on lab for the day. And then once that's all finished, we'll regroup. at the end of the day to take care and clean our own areas, sanitize, make sure everything is nice and neat for the next session, the AM session coming in the following morning, as they do the same for us going into PM. Thank you.
Our success. At the end of the year, all of my seniors will take the Technical Skills Assessment Test, which is a TSA. It's just to show, all schools have to take this, all programs, and it's to show how much our seniors have learned over the 2 or 1 year process that they've been there. We have a 92% pass rate with that. The seniors that do pass that particular test then will go on to take the Industrial Recognized Credential, which is an IRC. Right now, I take all of my seniors that pass to Jefferson City, where they will show their skills. This is a skill test now, doing a car stop, working a crime scene, going before an award interview, these types of things. And they are judged by the Missouri Peace Officers Association. What do they get from that? Well, a nice certificate stating that these seniors have a basic knowledge of law enforcement coming out of the program. We have been extremely successful in Skills USA. That is the national organization in which we belong. We have had over the 14 years, because they canceled COVID year, and we haven't gone this year. So this is a 14-year count that we have had 127 medalists, 53 state championships, 28 top 10 finalists in the nation, 3 national titles, and then we also are very proud that we have 28 state officers over the last 14 years, representing not only our school, but the state of Missouri at the national level and Skills USA officers. And then on the right, that is the Skills USA framework. What that is Skills USA went out and they interviewed many different corporations, companies, and everything. And they said, this is what we want our employees coming in to be strong in these areas. So we really put a lot of attention and emphasis on the Skills USA framework in all of our teachings on a daily basis. The one thing that I do like is a lot of that crosswalks with our GOs, and communication being one of the top ones. Okay. And I have Captain Tyler Olson to talk about his future, because he's a senior getting ready to graduate.
One of our focuses mainly in this program is our future. We have a lot of opportunities to be able to help us in our future and build things like our resume, especially because we're in another career center that we've applied for and have been accepted for. We are really dedicated to improving our future. So we do that through many opportunities, including just learning about a resume, going to leadership conferences and learning about leadership and learning about many of these different skills that you see up on the presentation. Through this program, I've gained many opportunities to also even go further in law enforcement. I will be attending the National Academy of Law and Justice in February, where I will go into Washington, D.C. and learning about many of the different law enforcement organizations there. And this program has been a really great way to improve my future. And I've found a way to combine both my law enforcement and another passion of mine, technology, together. I plan to be majoring in cybersecurity and a minor in criminology. Both of these together will be able to combine both my passions together and hopefully become a digital forensics analyst at the federal level. This program has been a great opportunity to improve myself as a person and to create ourselves for our future.
So of our 646 students, 20% so far have become, are working in the law enforcement area. 46% are currently within post-secondary college and or proudly serving in our military. And 2% have moved on to the medical field and or of nurses or doctors. The reason I say nurses or doctors in that is that a lot of them took my program and then went into the medical field to become forensic nurses and doctors. The remaining 32% are working in an unrelated field and or just unknown. We lose track of some of them. The reason I have that up there, though, is because I want to tell you that even though the 32% did not go into the law enforcement field, even though I'm hired and paid to teach law enforcement, all I want is my students to graduate successfully and to become hardworking citizens and responsible citizens wherever they may go. Our results, 62 police officers to date is what we have. 31 of them work right here in Kansas City. Okay, and I'm very proud of that fact. 20 of them are still in the metro area for other departments, 8 other cities and states around the country. I have 2 in the federal areas of the FBI and 1 Missouri State Highway Patrolman, 16 crime lab technicians and or CSIs. Now, this is where I go back just a little bit. Of the 31 KCPD officers, all of them are male except one female. But I go down to the 16 crime lab technicians and CSIs, all of them are female except 1. Okay, so it's kind of a weird transition there. But and then you see dispatchers and communication, corrections officers, practicing attorneys. There are 3 that have formally come from my program. Social workers, 30 through 34 private security, 1 forensic nurse, and currently 150 plus are in college and 150 plus are in the U.S. military serving throughout the world. Our partnerships, I like to call this the Big 4. There we go, got to have the Big 4. Kansas City, Missouri, Platte County, Clay County, and Worlds of Fun. I'm not going to count out the Highway Patrol, but I work very closely with these 4 other departments. And we have created over the 14 years a pretty solid working relationship and partnership with all 4. But I'm here today to try to strengthen that even more. So, building for tomorrow, what we have already accomplished. This year, first, we grew our program from 54 students to 80 and hired a co-instructor. This is the official clicker back here, Officer Hopper. And we have taken on the 80 students. Now from here, tomorrow, I wish to try to build a local IRC. It's great we're going to the state side, and I still want to keep doing that, but I want to bring it home here where Kansas City, Platte County, and Clay County, and Worlds of Fun all come in April. I bring my seniors down to, say, the regional academy. We set up a skilled area there, and your recruiters are all there. It's time to start watching these kids. When they're coming out of high school at 18, I know they can't apply for the academies to become police officers until they're 20, 20 and a half. But if you can start watching them now, I go back to the 1 Missouri State Highway Patrolman. The Highway Patrol saw him in my program, and they stayed in contact with him the entire way until he was ready to apply, and then they snatched him up. There's no reason why we can't be doing that right here, staying in contact with them. And that's where I want to go into the internships. If we can build that IRC right here, then we can also move to go to a bigger program and possibly start internships with Kansas City, Platte County, Clay County, and then move them into Worlds of Fun and maybe Worlds of Fun Security to start getting that experience while they're going to post-secondary education and getting their college degrees. By the time that's over, they're ready to move right on into the police department. I also want to grow the program from a 2-year to a 3-year program, starting with sophomores and then juniors, and then my seniors would come back and go into a work study program on the first semester, and then in the last semester of their senior year, hopefully go into a 30-day internship with Kansas City, 30 days with Platte County, 30 days with Clay County, and then finish it up with Worlds of Fun, which is a paid internship. And now Rashid out there at Worlds of Fun is loaded with security officers, and boy, is he excited about that. Okay. And ultimately, we would like to become the Junior Regional Police Academy right underneath the Regional Police Academy that you all have. So that's what we're building for. I like showing those pictures because a lot of your sons and daughters are in those. I've got a lot of Kansas City's children. I'll use this, patrol brats come through my program. And that's only because I was a patrol brat. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Man, this is an incredible program. It reminds me of the old ROTC.
Very close, very close, yes. We don't have an ROTC in the Northland area, so it's been discussed, and I have had a lot of students come through my program looking for an ROTC program. So that's how I ended up getting them.
This is, I mean, this is more practical for
the transition.
What's needed for the transition now.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the community colleges, MCC.
Yes, we sent a lot of students to there. We also have an articulation with MCC in that if our students go there, they can apply for and get 5 hours accredited to them for going through our program. Yes.
Okay. That's great. Any other?
How's it funded?
We're through the Platte County R3 School District. We are one of 2 career centers in the entire state that are all self-sustaining, meaning we create our own funds. Each one of the sending schools, they pay $3,500 a piece to send their students there. And then there are also, that's a director question, other ways to bring in monies to that. That's like my goals of how I'm wanting to grow the program and everything. Right now, we are going, our directors are working on building a new career center. Ours is just very outdated, and we're busting at the seams. So they're trying to build a new career center at 150 Highway 152 and Platte Purchase Road is where they're trying to build the new one at. With that, we would have a whole new area for our program. And from that, that's where I want to really start making it a 3-year program and going from there. So I don't know if I answered your question completely or we asked for money.
Get in line.
We'll take anything you want to give.
The commissioner knows some people.
So there is they attend this during school hours, or is this after school hours?
No, it's during school hours. I have an AM and a PM session. AM is from 8 o'clock until 10:40, and then we have a lunch time in there. That's where Officer Hopper and I get to breathe just a little bit. And then the next session comes in at 11:30 to 2:05. And then that's our day. We keep them busy for pretty well almost 2.5 hours.
And is it every day?
Monday through Friday. We are on the same schedule as the Platte County R3 School District.
Officer Halper, you were also in law enforcement? Yes, ma'am. All right. Question for you all. Very interesting. Have you ever discussed with other school districts expanding the program? Obviously, if you were to expand further east, 152 in Platte Purchase, you might still be in R3, but have you talked to, I guess, North Kansas City, Liberty, Smithville about opportunities?
They all attend our school.
Okay.
All of they're part of that 17 that attend there. Everything north of the river comes to the Northland Career Center.
And do those other school districts end up funding the students that are participants in the program, or does Platte R3 eat that?
No, they have to pay to send them there to us.
So theoretically, any school district, if we were to look south of the river as well, or?
Well, the south of the river, there are 2 other career centers in the metro area, one at Fort Osage and then another one down in Raytown at Herndon. And they both have the same program in their schools.
Oh, fascinating.
So as part of your curriculum, there are other studies that's taking place during that 2 hours.
Yes, yes. They still have to have their core classes to be able to graduate. This is considered an elective. They get 3 electives for taking this, and along with 1 English credit and 1 math credit.
Now, if you were to look to expand further, you had talked about credentialing, not necessarily through the state exclusively, but building your own. Would that be the sort of thing that all of our programs here in the greater Kansas City metro might be able to avail themselves of?
Yes,
That'd
most
be the
definitely.
goal.
Most definitely. I mean, we're just one program in the entire school. There are several other. I think we have 11 programs total there for the Northland Career Center. So, hopefully the Kansas City area would benefit from all of those rather than just mine. It's just mine. I'm trying to cater more to the Kansas City Police Department and the community.
And you don't have to necessarily know all the reasons, but at a time where it is difficult to recruit, and at a time where people often say that young people don't wish to do anything, you're showing the exact opposite, increasing your program numbers from the low 50s to 80 interested, among other things. Why? How have you been able to? Is it kind of the strength of the program and word of mouth? Do you think there are other things going on that we might be able to steal from you to try to expand that even
First
further?
of all, I think it's kudos to our youth. Even though we see the problems that law enforcement's having and trying to heal from and grow from, they're coming to me in droves, if you will, because they want to be involved. They want to be a part of their communities. They want to help. Something that I put a great emphasis on, and it's my own personal belief, but I really teach communication. We have to be able to communicate. So, I mean, I do not have the problem or the issue of filling the program like others do, like other programs do. I said 120 plus will be coming to us. This Thursday is our first Shadow Experience Day, where we have about 23 students, sophomores wanting to come and check us out, and maybe be new students of ours next year. We have a Shadow Experience Day, one a month, all school year long. The first one is usually a little lighter. The one when we get to January, February, we'll probably have anywhere from 30 to 40 kids coming to us in one day, along with all of my regular students. We're full, we're packed, but there are students that are coming to see what the program is about. So I don't think there's any shortage. I don't foresee that we're going to have an issue in sending young men and women to you later on. And that's my full focus, is try to get the young, because Doug already said 10 years from now, he's not here. Well, this is our future. 10 years, I won't be here. That's Officer.
Right.
She'll be coming back.
But I think it's important that you look at the number, and this is why I really wanted them to come. You have to take the first 6 years really out of the picture, because when we started the program, or when Derek started the program, you have the kids for the first 2 years, then you got a 4-year window for them kids to go to either the military or to school. So to catch up, really in the last 8 to 10 years, we've gained 31 recruits on our employees on our police department from this one program. We've also gained civilian employees with folks at the crime scene. As you see, they're past this CSI law enforcement, so they learn crime scene. They also learn law enforcement in that class, and usually they choose one or the other that they're a little more heavy on. But this program's come so far. It started with kids showing up like you see them showing up in high school. We developed a uniform system because they wanted to be more law enforcement. I can tell you my goal from this is, and I know Derek's, he may not like this, but my goal is, like you were just going towards, Mayor. I think Independence is involved with the Fort Osage program. There's no reason we can't be involved in that Fort Osage program too as a recruitment. There's no reason we can't be involved in the Raytown. And he's very humble about the fact when he says he has 3 national champions. We watch college football and they have a national champion. He has 3 national championships in this program where he competed against 50 states.
54.
Yeah, or there you go. See? So it's impressive of what the kids and young people of our community have done in this area. And my goal, and I think it's been the goal, this police department's been very supportive to send officers go there on their own time. Officers have been there on duty. When I was undercover, I took my interdiction squad up. I think that was one of the groups that won one of the awards at the national. They did a whole thing on drug interdiction, and we helped them with their program there, and that was a big deal. And the detectives and officers got as much out of it as the kids did. So this has been a huge investment over most of my career. I will tell them I'm very proud of them. I think we should invest more, because this is a true feeder system into our recruitment. And I think we can expand that with these other organizations, as you were talking about. Independence, Lee Summit, they like to go to Fort Osage for obvious reasons. But the Raytown program, and help build that, because as you said, there was 4 programs in the entire state. Now we're up to 17 programs. And that's what it's going to take to continue to make law enforcement thrive. Sorry.
That's quite right.
It's when you think about 31 folks in really 10 years, That's quite a few. Whenever they have the opportunity to pick any law enforcement spot, they chose KCPD.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The personnel summary is behind tab D. As of October 31st, KCPD has a total strength of 1,731 employees. This includes 1,195 law enforcement members. We are 115 employees less than this time last year. KCPD is down a total of 295 employees. The monthly average separation rate has increased to 18 members a month. We started 2021 at 15. In November, we expect 9 more employees to leave the department. In December, there's another 23 members that are scheduled to retire. It's anticipated that there are more members will file for retirement before December 31st. The FOP Lodge 99 follows this very closely, and they anticipate by the end of 2021, KCPD will be down to 162 sworn members. This is equivalent to the 1990s. KCPD has hired some laterals over the past, in 2020 and 21, we've had 5 laterals total hired. But KCPD has hired 60 potential law enforcement members in the past 2 years while losing 204 law enforcement members. So the trend continues. It's a concerning trend that KCP is not able to retain their law enforcement members. We're still recruiting. Our employment unit is recruiting as much as they can to create a large pool of potential academy recruits when it's time to start the academies again. And try and fill KCPD back up. Do you have any questions? Okay, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Hicks. Business items for approval.
It's always the fun part of the board meeting. My items are under tab A. And I apologize for the coughing and the carrying on today, but we're going to get through this here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so item number 1 for me is a budget transfer of grant funding. This is a request that we will transfer $236,723 from personnel services and $58,000 from contractual services, totaling $294,723 to the commodities of the Police Drug Enforcement Fund, 234, and then transferring $27,301 from personnel services and $699 from contractual services, totaling $28,000 into capital outlay. And all these transfers are occurring within the grant funding. One's due to a vacancy within our forensic specialist out at the lab. A second is due to there is a lot less overtime work than what was anticipated when the grant was originally funded. And actually, we were awarded, our grant allocations were more than we actually anticipated. So we had more money than we thought we were going to get. And this grant is coming to an end on December the 31st. What we're looking to do is transfer that so we can purchase equipment out at the lab prior to the end of this grant expiring. So I'd request your approval on that.
I move approval.
Second.
Move in second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no.
I'll vote in the negative.
Ayes have it. Next item.
Second item is the blank pledge agreement forms and signature cards. We do this each year, are for renewal and due to personnel changes. I recommend approval on these items. At the conclusion of this board meeting, Sergeant McCollum will get all the signatures for the bank cards once that's approved.
You trust him? I'm kidding.
Do I trust McCollum or do you trust me?
I'll move
Oh,
approval.
did I say Sergeant?
Second.
Sergeant, I'm medicated. I got a cough. Major McCollum, sorry, I'm so sorry.
I moved approval.
I second.
Been moved and second. All in favor by aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it. Next item.
Item number 3 is our audit.
And it's under what tab?
AC.
We're
Third and A.
B.
under tab A, but it's the 3rd item.
Yeah, we're all over the place because your other one was under AA.
Right.
So this one's under AC. So that's why you've got to.
Maybe I should say item C and I said item 3. So the next one will be item D. Mine, I just have them numbered in mine. So it'd be under tab A, item C. I request your approval to renew the audit service contract with Cochran Head Viking Company. This is the 4th year of this contract, and it's to complete our audit.
And it'll continue to have the 20% minority.
It will.
Okay.
Yes.
That was not clear.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by nay. Ayes have it.
Item D is the purchase of the new vehicles during this budget year. We had 11 companies / car dealerships that were contacted to put in a bid under 2022-4 in order to supply us with new 2022 Ford police SUVs. Shawnee Mission Ford was the only dealership that made a bid. Their bid was for $33,789 for each vehicle, and then one service manual at a cost of $194. I'd request to accept this bid and that we purchase 26 police SUVs with a total cost of $878,708. We have this budgeted as an expense in the 2021-2022 budget year, so I'd request your approval on that.
I move approval.
Second.
Favored by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Item E is the RFP 2022-2, which is the installation of law enforcement equipment into our cars. There were 3 companies involved in the bid. The only bid that was returned was from KCOM Incorporated. The department anticipates spending approximately $173,696.17 for the installation of all the emergency equipment on the new vehicles, with a 20% contingency in there, which would total $34,739.24, making the total $208,435.41. And these numbers are based off of what we have spent over the past 2 years. So that's an estimate, but I'd request your approval for that expenditure to place the emergency equipment on our vehicles.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
That is all my items, but I do want to take just 1 minute, even though I've talked quite a bit. I want to take a minute to thank my entire staff in fiscal over the past several weeks. Many of you know Manager Christine Ryder, Major Derek McCollum, Captain Jonas Bauman, Sergeant Jennifer Crump, and all the fiscal division. They've worked a lot of hours on this budget. And even though a really minor change, we may make a decision at this table and a minor change turns into hours of work for them because it goes through that entire budget. So I just want to publicly thank them for, they worked a lot of nights when we all left and a lot of weekends when we were at home. So thank you to them.
I echo that. And we recognize, we had those 2 days of budget meetings, and we knew when we left one of them that you all were going to have to work hard to be ready for the next one. So we appreciate the effort.
And I thank them. I also wish them luck when you go before Finance Committee over at City Council. I know they'll have lots of questions, but I know you'll all be very well prepared.
We'll be ready. That's all I have unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Professional Development Research Bureau.
Good morning.
Morning.
My information is under tab B and also in the handout that you got before the start. Quick update for the Academy. The 172nd is still scheduled and on pace to graduate in December. They're currently down to 6 members. I know yours says 8, but we lost 2 at the end of last week. But those are outside agencies. The 173rd is going to graduate in March, and we're still at 26 recruits for KCPD and 13 outside agencies. Still holding strong there. That's it for the Academy, if there are no questions. Yes?
Question on the Academy. Are the departures this year, it feels anecdotally, but perhaps I'm forgetting, is this consistent with what we see year to year?
Yes. And I will say that we're looking to have an outside class start February 7th with some latitude in numbers. So if we're able to send some Kansas City recruits, we'll be able to do that as well. That's the 7th of February.
Approximately how many in that class?
Well, we're holding 15, we're putting 15 outside through. That'll give us anywhere up to 45. It's just all dependent on funding. And we have a decent pool right now to not the full 45, but upwards of 30 probably that we could send through in February and hope that that works out. Our youth services unit or division, I'm sorry, youth services unit continues to work hard with the limited staffing. The youth program section is currently teaching the DARE program in 11 schools, with one more getting ready to start next week. And I say the 11, 2 of those graduated recently, last week. 2 of those of the 11. We had a cohort early in October of the Youth and Police Initiative at the Boys and Girls Club that went well. For PAL, the attendance for October was 795 kids. PAL hosted their track and treat event. We dedicated the new pickleball courts earlier this month, which is a huge project. I think the final cost was like $88,000 that they were able to raise and get that done. If you haven't been out there, I strongly encourage you to get out and take a look. They're very nice. We hosted, along with Swope Health, a COVID vaccination, and we had various other events at PAL as well. One of the biggest events that we had, I brought Sergeant Cox back to talk about, was our draft gala, and I won't take a whole lot of his thunder or none of it. I'll let him explain.
Thank you, sir. So as I was here last month, I talked briefly about some of our fundraisers, and we had our largest fundraiser on November 6th. And it's cool because that is it's collaboration with Kansas City, Kansas, PAL. And if you don't know that Kansas City, Kansas, so a retired officer from Kansas City, Missouri, Matt Tomasek, went over and said he wanted to start some type of program similar in his hometown, which was Kansas City, Kansas. And so he started this initiative and started a PAL chapter about 3 years ago. So we put this collaborative effort together in 2019 with hopes of trying to help kind of expand their horizons and their awareness in their community, but also raise some funding because they were just getting started. So that was where this initiated. We didn't get to do it in COVID year. So this is our second one. And it was phenomenal. We had some great stories, a lot of great context made out of this. But I'll show just a few pictures of this. Anytime we get this opportunity to interact with our community, we love to spotlight some of our different department units. And so this occurred at the Urban Youth Academy, which the Kansas City Royals and the Urban Youth Academy donated everything to us to be able to put this event on. So here's our K-9 officers demonstrating, which if you've ever seen that live, I mean, like, that is incredible. People were just in awe of that. And the command that the officer has of the dog and the way the dog responds, it's amazing and it's fun to see. But we also had, that's Sergeant Ward Smith, who is our range master. He did set up with our TAC officers an airsoft shoot, don't shoot scenario where people actually got to go through a situation where really put them into like a real life scenario that our officers go through. So that's one of our individuals going through that process. TAC officers were there with all their fun toys for people to see. We even had the drones out who were spotlighting over the top and doing a demonstration for all the people there as well. This is a good picture of just the beginning of the event. As the event started, we had Royals, retired alumni Royals players who were on hand kind of telling their stories. This is the backside of that, and it's a cool picture because that drone actually inside the Urban Youth Academy getting the shot. And the guy's telling a story while everybody's getting their meals to start the event. This is a picture of from the back. You can look out and you see, and you'll notice that everybody is standing. This is, we started off with our, my partner down at PAL, Sergeant Dion Renty, told his personal story about his growing up and how he related his growing up to our PAL kids. He grew up in North Tulsa in kind of a rough neighborhood, was a son of a single mom who worked a lot, said that his friends, quote unquote, were the guys who were out on the corners doing things that shouldn't be doing. And if not for a program similar to PAL, he would have gone a different direction. But as he's telling the story, and it was an emotional story for those people that were there, it was incredible. And he connected the dots as to saying how his life has changed because he had an interaction relationship with police officers. In fact, his two best friends, also in the same neighborhood, are also police officers throughout the United States. And so that is everybody. And I've been to a lot of these events. When you have that many people stand up and applaud, like, I mean, it was incredible to see. He really hit it home. But our keynote speaker was Willie Wilson. So Royals Hall of Fame, Willie Wilson. And so Willie was here the whole week, and it was great because he got to go to visit our PAL Center, interact with the kids, which was great on both ends because he had a great message to deliver because he grew up in New Jersey and went to a PAL Center and talked about the officers that made an impact on him. And if you remember last time when I was here during our last meeting, I was talking about our renovation of our locker rooms and how that was really important. Well, so Willie's telling the story, and when I did the tour with Willie, I told him why we renovated those locker rooms. And he like stopped and he kind of stared off, and I didn't know what exactly that meant to him. But he told the story that night as how when he was going through that tour and saw the locker rooms and the renovations, it hit really close to home to him because he grew up a lot of times where he said, I was bullied because I didn't get to shower and I didn't have those same opportunities. And so he was very emotional in sharing that story as well. So the crowd, I think that the mission was hit. I think everybody understood. We had about 35 different corporate sponsors, which I think is important to note because I grew up in Kansas City, and there aren't too many times that I can think of collaborative efforts between two organizations across the state line working together for one mission. And having this many different sponsors is one thing. Having 350 people, 75 volunteers, with a gross income of $165,000 for that event, which is great work, right? But to me, the most important part is that final bullet point there is the community outreach. So I had 7 people come up to me after that event saying that they wanted to be board members either in Kansas City, Missouri or Kansas City, Kansas, that's a heck of a commitment, right? We had people who were interested in being tutors. We had countless people who were talking about wanting to be volunteers. So it is not just, the financial piece of doing those events is great, but it really is the outreach. And I hope that, and I think that everybody that walked away that night had a sense of pride in Kansas City, and that we are a spotlight in a lot of different ways, but our PAL centers in both Kansas and Missouri are something to be proud of. And I think everybody walked away with that idea. So I was told to be brief. I could talk all day, but that's as quickly as I can do that. So I have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you.
I'll just let you know that moving forward, Bethany and Skip will be texting, and he will let her know of upcoming events, and she will make sure that everyone on the board is aware of those. And if you have any questions, just get with me. But the more stuff you can show up with, we'd love to have you all there. That's the end of that part, and we'll go into the consent agenda. I have 2 items. First one is adult missing persons and missing runaway juveniles. If you don't have any questions, I would ask for approval of that.
Move approval.
Second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it.
Second and final one is the workplace-related incidents. Again, with no questions, I would move for approval.
I move approval.
Second. All in favor by aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. So that was personnel development. Office of General Counsel.
Good afternoon. My information is under tab F. There are 3 sections. The first section is our monthly reporting for the private officers licensing unit. Section 2 is an appeal from a denial of an unarmed private security license. Section 3 is the appeal for an armed private security license. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, they are submitted to you for review.
Is the criteria the same for unarmed as it is for armed?
Yes. Sorry, it's been a minute since I've read all that.
I don't know the process by which we'll evaluate each of these. I'd like to speak on the final one. Former actually Kansas City Police Department officer was looking for an armed approval, resigned in 2008. I do appreciate his candor and contrition in the request application, and I would actually look to reverse the underlying decision and permit him the licensure. Also, given the amount of time that's spaced from the infraction noted as January 2008. So 13 years, I think there was a good admission there. And I think that this is a former officer who's trying to make sure he can create opportunities for himself and his family.
Is that a motion?
I'll move. I will. I'll move to reverse the decision made before.
I second that.
Wait, is this on the second one, Goldman?
This is
or-
on Goldman.
Right.
Goldman?
Yes, sir.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed by no.
No.
All right. Ayes have it.
I think I'd make the same motion for the first one. Unarmed, and it's been a while, and I mean, unarmed is, to me, is a little bit different from being armed. And, you know, it's great that he's looking for employment and employment. And so I think I'd move to reverse that one.
I'll second that. The reason being, I'll also note that in that situation, he appears to still have his post certifications in Missouri and Kansas. There's a non-disclosure agreement, I guess, that keeps us from knowing further details of the situation, but they weren't enough for the Mission Police Department to bring, I guess, further penalty on his ability to be a law enforcement officer. This being far below that, I think that's why I'll second.
All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no.
No.
Ayes have it. All right. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Office of Community Complaints, an update. And I guess we're talking about the community portion of that as well.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Office of Community Complaints has provided to you in advance copies of its monthly reports for October 2021, which are located under tab GB of your electronic devices or board books. At this time, I will provide you with the most significant highlights of OCC's activities. For the month of October 2021, the office received a total of 23 complaints, which represents a 15% decrease compared to October 2020, when the office received 20 complaints. Year-to-date, the OCC has received 189 complaints compared to the 212 that were received during the same time period last year, representing an almost 11% decrease in the number of complaints received. For the months of August, September, and October, the OCC submitted for formal investigation 35 complaints received to the Internal Affairs Unit. These 35 complaints reflect a 8.9% decrease compared to the same time period last year when the Internal Affairs Unit received 39 complaints. In keeping with OCC's efforts to bring complaints to resolution, in lieu of investigation, the OCC handled 30 non-investigated complaints during the aforementioned time period. This represents a 7.4% increase from the same time period last year. Year-to-date statistics for complaints that have been investigated and reviewed are as follows. 95 recommendations rendered by OCC and fully investigated by the Internal Affairs Unit. The concurrences by the board and the chief were on 19 not sustained recommendations, 24 exonerations, and 11 sustained recommendations. The Internal Affairs investigation of 18 other complaints during this time period were terminated either for non-cooperation by the complainants, closed by the OCC, or voluntarily withdrawn by those complainants. This ends my statistical report. Are there any questions? All right, just a couple of staff updates. We continue our partnership with the Kansas City Human Rights Commission to develop some ongoing forums in a speaker series that will begin in January or February of next year, actively working on getting that scheduled. So we should have an announcement on that first one shortly. Also, we'll be conducting trainings at the Regional Police Academy this upcoming Friday in the area of communication, conflict resolution, and de-escalation. At this time, Karen Williams, Senior Legal Analyst, will be traveling to Tucson, Arizona in December for the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement Conference. This year they did a hybrid conference where you had the first portion was this summer that was virtual, but also there will be in-person presentations next month. And Karen will be representing the OCC at that conference. And at this time, I'll turn over the podium to Karen to come and talk about the history of the Community Advisory Committee, as she was the facilitator and convener of that group in the past. And then we'll answer any questions as to how we plan to move forward with the reintroduction of that group. Thank you.
Good afternoon. In your packets, you should have a copy of the proposed bylaws and other information application about the revitalized Community Advisory Council or Community Advisory Board. That board was started after our 2004 OCC audit, where then Auditor Mayor Funkhauser recommended that we get some outside input into our operations and have an organization that would serve as our eyes and ears in the community. And so they did that from the period of about late 2005, if I'm recalling correctly, up until about 2011 or 2012, at which time the board itself or the advisory committee itself agreed that it had done all of its work at that point. As I said before, it really served as our eyes and ears in the community. We had a very good representation from all of our different facets of the community, both from our city council districts. We had people in a variety of careers. We had former complainants. We had representatives from all of the various cultural and social economic groups that were present. So it was a really good group. They gave us a lot of good, valuable information, allowed us to do a lot of public speaking engagements within agencies that they were in part of, that maybe were groups that we didn't necessarily have a group with or an inroads with at that point. So that's led to a lot of our contacts that we do have to this day. Helped us identify further groups that we needed to reach out to. They also talked to us a lot about how we could streamline our operations and how to make sure that we can get the word out about our office. And probably their most important task, at least in our eyes, was the testing of our locations. So as you'll recall, we have about 10 KCPD locations that receive complaints, but we also have 3 outside locations. And so part of what they would do is, not being known well by the department, is that they would go in and file a mock complaint, and we would make sure that our policies in terms of being notified of the complaint, either by phone or email, and that we're getting those in a timely fashion, were being followed, and that they were not given improper information about whether they're allowed to take the complaint form or things like that. And that would definitely be something that we will reiterate with this new group. So any questions so far?
And
Harold?
I
Yes.
ask, so they determined their work was complete in 2012? Did they, I mean, was the genesis of it, I guess, an audit deficiency found by the then city auditor / then mayor, and they wanted to cure certain issues or items, and that's how it ended? Or
I think they just felt that there wasn't more that they could accomplish. That we had created new relationships. We had worked on establishing other forms of getting the word out about our organization, some of our outreach documents and things like that, that the interest was waning and they ceased to exist.
And also, let me just add, a large part of it was that that group really, they aged out. Lost a number of individuals who were active participants on that board. They passed on. And I think it just, dealing with this work can be burdensome at times. And so a number of the individuals, I think that they got to a point where they said, we've taken this endeavor as far as it can go right now. And so we decided to put it on hiatus until we were able to reconstitute and reformulate at a later time, which is now.
We definitely, with news that we're going to revitalize this, we've had people reach out to us that have been participants in the past that are still very interested in participating. So I would anticipate that they will apply as we open up the process.
Is that one of the reasons that this proposal has the 2-year term and then no more than 4 years, so that you've got active turnover and new participants all the time?
Absolutely. And it was becoming an issue. As Meryl said, several of our board members unfortunately passed away in the course of that. And then finding new interested parties, not as easy. But we also want to make sure that we are continually looking for new folks and looking at new groups and maybe people that we hadn't considered in the past to become part of the organization. So, but we're finding it with any oversight body that has this type of thing, is that there needs to be a constant influx of new ideas, new bodies, that we don't want to become stagnant.
So that's something that was in the works. It died off, so we don't need to reapprove it. We just need to get it going.
As Karen stated, the initial group was put together from a recommendation from the city auditor's office. And it was something that, in fact, former director Bill Fain, that she wanted to have established at any rate. So no, I think we pretty much have infrastructure and things in place. We just want to make sure that we get the ball rolling on soliciting applications from community members, hopefully to have that board constituted during the first quarter of 2022.
I would actually propose hitting the brakes just a bit. We heard Councilwoman Robinson mention some interest in this particular area. I understand the chamber, and maybe you've spoken to them, but they have some task force that wants to.
I've been in constant communication with the chamber throughout that entire process.
Maybe you've satisfied their concerns, but last week they called me and said, Mayor, we want to talk to you about this. So I don't know. Maybe they're perfectly happy.
I would encourage you to have them I'll contact my contacts at the chamber, because I think that there's some legalities that they may not be aware of is going to dramatically limit what they were trying to do during their presentation a couple of months ago at this body. So I'll get into contact with the chamber and have a conversation with them to make sure that they're fully aware of what we're able to do and what we're not able to do with this advisory board.
Because I only know those who reach out to me. I try to catch others, but they want to play a role, and I have found them to usually be a responsible organization. And so let's try to work with as many stakeholders who wish to be a part of this, and perhaps educate them or work with them to get back to what I think could be a good result for us.
Absolutely, not a problem.
How many directors are we talking about?
11.
Yeah, and I think that based upon a conversation that you and I had this morning about what's legal and possible for that group to see, that we have to abide by the state and federal and the laws that deal with that. So I think it's something, Mayor, that brings us more goodwill to proceed, and then we deal with all those other things as we go along. So it doesn't really take an approval. You're just informing us of what we are reigniting. And it was good to hear the history of that. So,
If it doesn't take approval, then I'll note my disagreement with codifying bylaws and solicitations prior to further discussion, probably with at least chamber representatives who are exceedingly responsible people who almost never do anything controversial. And so I think, yes, we get the PR benefit, but let's, kind of to Commissioner Wagner's point from a few hours ago, let's get everybody on board who can help amplify that message.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But let me be absolutely clear. I'm not privy to your conversation with chamber members, but we've been in constant communication with our stakeholders, and the chamber is one of them. I don't know what those conversations are. I will reach out to the chamber to find out, but I cannot imagine that it's much different than the conversations that I've had previously. We will reach out to them, but again, this is just something that we've already had the infrastructure and all this other stuff was already developed. So we're really just trying to make sure that as soon as possible, we're able to give the community some type of entree into providing input into the OCC process, which has been asked about for now going on a year and a half now. So that's our only wish here. We're just trying to move forward and not delay the process any further.
You share, not necessarily in this form, but share with him who spoke to you,
Yeah,
what their concerns were.
I can even let you know here. So it's Kathy Bennett, who's the Director of Government Relations at the Chamber, who reached out to my office, I think, within recent days, asking for further engagement and discussion on this topic. And I understand they have a whole committee that's working on these sorts of issues as well. And perhaps you've spoken to them on that, but
Is that the same committee that made the presentation to us with the Civic Council?
unfortunately, I was not here, but I believe it would be, yes.
It is.
They have asked for this, but I don't mind having more conversation about exactly what we're trying to do.
Well, there's an application process. So I think that if they have people that are interested in getting on that committee, they should have them fill out the application.
Sure.
You know, because we aren't going to just, pick and choose. Oh, you can be on it. Everybody's got to go through the same process.
But if they're the lawyers, like I know some of them to be, I don't know the legal issue. I haven't been in all these meetings. Probably the difference here is that they think that a board can be constituted in a way that the board can't, and it will report to different sources. I mean, you may know better than me.
Well, now,
what's the legal?
You're getting beyond the span of authority of the OCC. If you're trying to do that, that's something that this body, meaning the Board of Police Commissioners, would have to review. And I think that you would also have to make sure that from a legislative standpoint that is appropriate. But if you're talking about anything beyond the level of confidentiality that we're able to extend to an outside entity, that's not within the span of our control of that. So
and that's in some way what they were looking for. Unfortunately, I didn't take the call, so I need to call them back.
I'll reach out to the chamber and see exactly what they were talking about, and then I'll report back to you on what their concerns were.
Because the only concern I might have, if their points relate to board composition, right? We may wish to stay the composition answer until we've resolved that. What I'm trying to avoid, I think everybody understands it, is you create something and everybody the week after saying that's useless and it doesn't satisfy that which we need. Now, at a certain point, you have to move. But part of the reason I'm making this point on the chamber is this isn't unified super left activist association that's saying we don't want an OCC anyway. This is the business community, or at least their representatives. And so that's why I'd want to make sure I'm understanding where they're coming from, because if we ain't got them.
Well, we just have to be sure that they understand that this is an advisory board. This board has no decision-making authority whatsoever. So I think that may also clear up some of the complications that this board really has no decision-making authority. It is strictly advisory only.
For example, who approves, board applicants, or
that'll be the staff of the OCC.
Staff of the OCC.
For example, why wouldn't the board of police commissioners?
If you would like to, I was trying to save you some work. If you would like to, that's fine.
And I would think that at some point, those individuals that are being considered will come through the board probably at a closed session, because that is a
Personnel.
human resource personnel type situation.
Further questions? All right, lastly, bear with me a moment. It pains me to report that Kansas City has lost yet another educator, former school board member, community leader, mentor, friend to the OCC and to the department. Also, just an amazing human being. And this individual comes in the person of Mr. Carl Evans. I first met Mr. Evans when I moved to Kansas City in 2001 upon completion of law school. I just happened to wander into his establishment, the T-shirt King at 12th in Brooklyn, during a lunch break. Mr. Evans was there, and after speaking with him, I realized that I was talking to the father of one of my classmates at Morehouse College, Chris Evans. Based on that relationship alone, Mr. Evans immediately became a father figure and mentor to me as a new resident in the city. Over the years, we would have innumerable discussions about life, about being an African-American male in a new professional setting, about what we could do just to make things better. He talked to me about Morehouse College and the expectations that people have of its graduates and all of our responsibilities to the communities in which we live, work, and serve. To that end, approximately 8 years ago, Chris approached me with the concept of badges in baseball and how we could use that event as a vehicle to build relationships between officers and youth, particularly African-American males. Mr. Carl Evans has been a constant fixture at each one of these events, as evidenced by the photographs, never shying away from offering his approval and suggestions on how we can just make things better. For that, we are eternally grateful. For Mr. Evans' life and his service, we are eternally grateful. We will continue to celebrate the life of Mr. Evans in the days and weeks to come, but on behalf of the Board of Police Commissioners, the Office of Community Complaints, and the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, I want to take this time to extend our prayers and condolences to his family, friends, and the Kansas City community. That's all I have, Commissioners. Thank you very much.
Public comments. Joy Marie Chamberlain.
Good morning, all. It occurred to me as I sat at the back of the room, I'm probably the only one in this room who doesn't work 37 hours a day. So thank you all. Thank you all for serving. I'm here to tell a story because KCPD is my family and I'm a proud family member. I stopped at a store last night, saw a police officer I know. He was printing out a ticket telling me that what had happened. He was going back into the store. I went in with him. There was a woman who was there, homeless, and he obviously had to write her a ticket. I don't know all the details, but he allowed me to stay there with her. And I am Joy Marie. You don't need to remember my last name. I'm Joy Marie. I'm the woman who prays for Kansas City Police. And
you're here every month.
I am. And thank you. And I pray for all of you, just so you know. You don't even have to ask for prayer. I have a lot of stories about my blue family, but I only have 52 seconds left. Anyway, this young man not only talked to this woman, but while I was with her and praying for her, he stepped aside, made phone calls so he could take her somewhere. Then he went to the ATM machine and he took out money. And before we left the store, I stayed with them the entire time. Before we left the store, he bought her a meal, spoke to her about a number of different things. I was right there with them the entire time and walked to the end of the store with him as they left for him to take her somewhere. I hugged him, told him I was proud of him, said I loved him. And as I walked away, he hollered over his shoulder, "I love you too." But as I turned, there was a little boy about 12 years old who had watched this entire scenario. And what I saw on his face was just awe, just respect and admiration for this officer. And that is a memory that is branded on my heart. And I just wanted to share that because despite of what's going on, there is integrity. There is integrity, there's a compassion, and there's a willingness to step out of their own comfort zone. This young man took money out of his own account to take care of this woman. So I just wanted to share that because I'm very proud. They are my family, and thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that story. Doug Schaefer.
I'm Doug Schaefer, member of, or resident of Kansas City for 32 years, neighborhood leader, member of Community Christian Church, board member of Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity, More Squared. I speak for all these constituencies and for my 3 Kansas City resident sons who live in jeopardy of an encounter with an unaccountable police officer. Accountability, or the need for it, was my theme when I spoke at this podium in May. The focus was on Chief Smith not holding officers accountable for their actions. Implicit in my call for the removal of the chief was that the board should hold him accountable. Most broadly, my desire is that the board be accountable to the people of Kansas City, not to the governor, which is why More Squared and other organizations are calling for local control. Recent reporting in the Kansas City Star about $9.7 million of monetary settlements made over the past 7 years by this department further demonstrates that the department is not accountable to the people of Kansas City. If we had local control of this department, we would not budget $2.3 million in one fiscal year for settlements for police misconduct. At More Squared, we believe budgets are moral documents. That this amount was budgeted is bad enough, but to blow past it by another $3.5 million demands accountability action. I doubt that I echo the public remarks of my one representative on this board, Mayor Lucas, who asked what might otherwise be funded with this money. Without these expenses, we might not hear fear-mongering about threats to close entire patrol sections. We might have more money to double the work with the Police Athletic League or the CIT, for example. Sadly, I've despaired that as a matter of practice, Black Lives Matter to this department and board. But even from a crass accounting view, does not black ink matter? What local business or city department other than this one would tolerate such financial malpractice? If you won't do the right thing and replace Chief Smith, can you at least do the money thing and replace Chief Smith? And if you won't hold the chief accountable, I request your resignation from the board out of money shame. If money talks, then this board should walk.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. General discussion from Chief Smith.
Good afternoon. I have a couple of things to report. We heard from Councilwoman Robinson this morning about mental health. We had a command staff meeting with our mental health provider, Dr. Prohaska, who had a session with all the commanders as an awareness to make sure that we're watching for employees and what those signs are. We had an officer from Long Beach, California come in and give a presentation about his journey of being involved in a couple police shootings and how that affected his life, almost to a horrible outcome. But obviously he got help and he came through it and he's doing really well. And that was a presentation. There was some questions and answers afterwards. But I just wanted the board to know that we continue down this journey about our mental health and what we can do to help our officers and civilian members of this department as they face obviously sometimes the worst I would like to say that Dr. Prohaska will be engaging with the department in the next 3 months. She'll be doing some research and some surveys as we try to work with her as we're doing research probably the first year that she will oversee and employees and what we can do to address like resiliency for trauma and things like that. We have a program already with our academy recruits from the medical school where their staff comes in and talks to our recruits. So we're now going to look at what we can do to our employees that are in service and how we can try and build our mental health abilities, capabilities, and awareness. So we continue through that. I did want to tell about the police academy. We had our last police academy graduation here between last board meetings. I think it was a couple weeks ago, which I'm always thrilled to see the citizens come through their Citizens Police Academy. They love it. I don't think they have any idea of what they're into the first week. I meet with them the first week and hear what they want to talk about and certain things. And then when they come up for graduation, I ask them what's the best thing or what did they learn? It's always interesting to hear. And you know, this year's theme was the passion of the officers. So out of all the things we hear, I want you to know there's good things happening and there's officers who are still very passionate about this job and what they're doing. And that came shining through at the Citizens Police Academy. I also thought it was great that at the Citizens Police Academy, we had 3 people went through who said their next step was to apply for the department. So I thought that was a wonderful bridge of getting them in, learning about the department, and they were kind of testing the waters to see if this is where they wanted to be. And after hearing from our staff and interacting with our staff, they were like, this is the department I'm going to apply. So I thought that was wonderful news also. After our budget session here, I just wanted the board to know that I conducted 2 budget presentations that was open to officers and their families, one at the academy, one at South Patrol, where we went through the exact same presentations that we had here at the board meeting and explained what was different about this year's budget and what we have done from the past and what we're moving towards. So those went very well, both of them for about 2 hours, and people stayed and asked questions. So they were very, very productive. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Chief. Approval of October open session minutes.
I move approval.
Second. All in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. Ayes have it. Mr. Skinner, anything you need to cover?
The only thing I wanted to cover is I understand that Alan Pierce is retiring tomorrow. He's been a wonderful man to deal with, and I just wanted to recognize him. Good guy. We're losing somebody important.
And he worked in what department?
He kind of did building ops. Yeah.
All right.
He's the one that's in charge of making sure we comply with security, among other things.
Mayor Lucas?
Good afternoon. I had the fortune this month of being at the White House twice, which is rare. I don't know if it'll ever happen again in my life. But in one of the meetings, we talked about certain investments being made by the administration in CVI, or community violence interruption. I had a chance to talk to them about some of the work we already do, and indeed some of it heard in the CIT presentation. And I know recent conversations, the chief and I had talked about making sure that we make clear to the Department of Justice, our department's varied ways to make sure we're addressing these issues and hopefully are interested in applying for grants and other items in the future. So we've had fruitful conversations there. Other than that, I'll just wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope they and their families all stay safe.
Thank you. Commissioner Kramer? All right. Commissioner Wagner?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Commissioner Dean?
Nothing.
Thank you. Commissioner Tobin? Nothing. I guess we need now, there's something down here about board hearing. Does everyone have that on their calendar? Friday, January 28th?
Yes.
So we need a motion to go out of this meeting, and then do we have a motion to go into close?
I'm going to move both, that we adjourn this meeting and go into the closed session.
I'm sorry. I missed a wonderful opportunity and I don't want to miss it. Jo Marie came up here and made a presentation, but I wanted to acknowledge her because she's everywhere in the department. Is she still here? Yes. So I don't know if you noticed today, there was a camera here. Colonial Presbyterian, where her church is filming her for her involvement with this police department. She is, how many ride-alongs have you done? 73. Recently we needed DNA kits, and she raised money through her church to purchase those DNA kits. I don't know if you saw a news story out of it, but obviously the story here is we just had someone who wanted to engage with our department and came on and is very active and involved. People know her at all the stations. I mean, she can't go anywhere without knowing someone. And I just wanted to acknowledge, since she was here, all the good work she does for the men and women on this department that she doesn't have to do. And it's just wonderful to see that kind of engagement.
Well, and as I said, she comes to every meeting. We see her here each month, so thank you.
That's all right. Thank you, Chief.
And one other thing, while we are in extended time, I'll bring throat lozenges next month for Deputy Chief Niemeyer. Help him out.
That's your assignment.
All right, we're ready for that.
I move that we adjourn this meeting and go into closed session.
Lucas, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Good second.
Need a second.
Second,
All
second,
right.
Lucas and Lucas, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Dean, aye.
Tolbert, aye.
Kramer, aye.
Aye, aye.